Don't let him find me. Annie pressed both hands together in front of her chest. She was trembling so badly that the paper grocery bag beside her knees began to crackle in the snow. Please, she whispered. Please, don't let him see me. William Hawthorne froze, one hand still resting on the open door of the black SUV. He looked down at the young black woman crouched behind his vehicle, then quickly scanned the parking lot. His eyes moved from the closed grocery store to the laundromat windows, from the rows of parked cars to the dark alley beside the hotel. Who? He asked, his voice lowering instinctively. Who are you talking about? Annie raised a shaking hand, palm facing downward, silently begging him not to speak loudly. Please, she said softly. Keep your voice down. William bent slightly, careful to keep enough distance so she would not feel cornered. All right, he said. I'm listening. There's a man, Annie said. Her words came out broken, as if each one had to force its way through the fear caught in her throat. He followed me from the store. At first I thought maybe I was wrong, but every time I stopped, he stopped too. When I crossed the empty lot, he crossed it too. William looked toward Monroe Market. The lights inside were still on, but the sign on the front door had been turned to closed. Near the far curb, a pickup truck sat still beneath a thin layer of snow, its windows dark. Beside the laundromat, a sedan was parked quietly, its windshield covered in frost. His driver, David Ross, stood near the open rear door of the SUV. David had broad shoulders, a silver beard, and the quiet stillness of an old soldier. His eyes had already begun sweeping the parking lot. Mr. Hawthorne? David said. William raised two fingers, signaling for him to wait. Annie startled at the sound of David's voice and quickly pulled the grocery bag closer. A can of chicken soup had rolled against the SUV's rear tire. A loaf of bread lay half outside its plastic bag. Cold medicine had fallen into the snow beside a few oranges, and a carton of milk dented at one corner. You were buying food? William asked. Annie nodded. For my mother. She's sick. I was just trying to get home. At that moment, William caught a flicker of movement near the far end of the lot. It might have been only a shadow crossing the laundromat window, or it might have been someone stepping back beside the old newspaper box. He reacted before he could think. His voice rose slightly. That man? He said, turning his head. Is that him over there? Annie's face went white. She reached out and gripped his sleeve with both hands. Don't say it so loud, she whispered, panic filling her voice. Please, sir. And don't let him find me. Don't let him know I'm here. William stopped at once. He lowered his voice. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. She held onto his sleeve for another second before slowly letting go. He was watching me inside the store, she said, near the medicine aisle. Then at the checkout. I tried to wait until someone else came out with me, but no one did. When I stepped outside, he was already near the newspaper box. This time, William followed her gaze more carefully. At first, the parking lot looked like any other empty parking lot. Faded white lines. A dirty pile of snow near the curb. A plastic shopping cart tipped over by the wind. Then he saw him. A man stepped out from beside the newspaper box. He was white, middle-aged, clean-shaven, wearing a dark wool coat and leather gloves. His hair was neatly combed back. He was looking straight toward the SUV, and William could not mistake the change on his face. He had seen Annie. Annie saw him too. She held her breath. The man began walking faster. Annie, he called, his voice so sweet it made the cold feel sharper. There you are, sweetheart. You scared me half to death. Annie immediately moved behind William before he could tell her to. Her fingers brushed the back of his coat. I don't know him, she whispered. I swear I don't know him. William straightened, naturally placing himself between Annie and the man without making a show of it. David moved a little closer to the car door, alert but silent. The man stepped into the yellow circle of the parking lot light and gave William an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, sir, he said. She panicked and ran off. I've been looking everywhere for her. Annie shook her head fiercely behind William. No, I didn't run away from home. I'm running away from you. The smile on the man's face did not change. Annie, don't do this in front of people. William studied him carefully. Who are you? The man seemed irritated by the question, but only for a moment. Marcus Vale, he said. I'm her father. No, you're not, Annie said at once. My father is dead. I don't know you. Marcus sighed, patient and sorrowful, as if he were used to carrying a private burden in public. That is exactly the problem, he said. She says things like that when she panics. I'm not panicking, Annie said. I'm scared. I already told you. I don't know you. Annie, Marcus said, his voice a little firmer. That's enough. William did not like the way he said those words. She says she doesn't know you, William said. Marcus shifted his gaze to him. The softness on his face began to crack. And who are you? William Hawthorne. A flash of recognition passed across Marcus's face. Not surprise. Calculation. He looked at the SUV, then at David, then back at William. Ah, Marcus said, still polite. So that explains the car. William said nothing. Marcus drew in a breath and gave a faint smile. Mr. Hawthorne, I respect your concern, but you have no right to stand between a father and his daughter. None at all. He is not my father, Annie said again. I don't know him. Marcus ignored her. This is a family matter. Do you understand? Or do men like you think every parking lot is another piece of land you can buy? David's jaw tightened, but William raised one hand slightly, signaling for him not to interfere. Marcus took another step closer. Tell me something. What exactly do you plan to do here? Put my daughter in your car? Drive away with her? Do you want your name on the morning news? Billionaire kidnaps daughter from her father outside a grocery store? Annie spoke quietly from behind William. That isn't true. Marcus looked past William at her. Be quiet. William felt the words like a slap, even though they were not aimed at him. Marcus turned back to William. Maybe you're used to people stepping aside when they hear your name, but I am not your employee. I am her father. I am responsible for her. She is having an episode, and I am trying to get her home before she hurts herself or someone else. I'm not having an episode, Annie said, her voice shaking more now. I went to buy soup. My mother is sick. I don't know this man. I have never lived with him. I have never called him Dad. Please don't believe him. Marcus's face tightened. See, that is exactly what I mean. When she gets worked up, she starts inventing things. She is pretending not to know you? William asked. She is confused. No, Annie said. I am not confused. I know my name. I know my mother's name. I know where I live. And I know I had never seen this man until he started showing up around my mother. For the first time, Marcus looked directly into her eyes with no softness at all. You should be careful about what you say. Annie stepped back. Mr. Hawthorne, Marcus said, spreading his hands as though he were trying to sound reasonable. You are being used. Yes, she is afraid. But she is not afraid of me. She is afraid because she is not well and does not understand what is happening. If you interfere, you will make things worse. And frankly, you will drag yourself into a very ugly situation. William knew what Marcus was doing. He was threatening him. He looked at Annie. She was still standing behind him, one hand gripping the back of his coat, the other pressed over her mouth as if she were trying to hold back a sob. Her eyes were fixed on Marcus. Then William looked back at Marcus. For one tired moment, he almost chose caution. He moved half a step to the side. It was small, but Annie felt it. Her hand slipped from his coat. Marcus saw it and smiled. Not much. Just enough. There, Marcus said softly. There is no need to make this unpleasant. Annie stared at William, and her face changed. She backed away, shaking her head. No, she said. No, I will not go with him. Annie, Marcus warned. I don't know you, she said louder, even as tears began running down her face. I don't know you. I don't know you. Stop saying you're my father. Marcus realized people were watching, so he adjusted his tone immediately. Sweetheart, you're embarrassing yourself. I don't care, Annie said. Her hands were shaking, but this time she did not try to hide it. My mother's name is Angela Carter. My father's name was Robert Carter. He died when I was little. This man is not my father. He followed me from the store. He was following me before tonight. He is lying. William heard the names clearly. Angela Carter. Robert Carter. Marcus took another step toward her. Enough. Annie backed against the SUV. William looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then his voice dropped. Prove it. Marcus froze. What? You said you are her father, William said. Then prove it. Marcus blinked. I don't have to prove anything to you. You do if you want me to step aside. This has nothing to do with you. You made it my business when you followed her to my car. Marcus clenched his jaw. I told you. She ran. I followed because I am responsible for her. Then you should have some documentation, William said. A driver's license with the same address. Some form of identification. Her mother's contact number. A family photograph. Medical paperwork. Anything that proves you have the legal right to take her with you. Marcus stared at him, and for the first time, the confidence on his face flickered. Annie noticed it. So did David. William continued, his voice still calm. Do you know her full name? Of course I do. Say it. Marcus glanced at Annie. Annie Carter. That is not proof. Marcus's mouth tightened. William asked, what is her date of birth? Marcus turned his face away for half a second. Too long. What clinic did she run away from tonight? William asked. You said she isn't well. What clinic is treating her? Marcus's voice hardened. I don't appreciate being interrogated in a parking lot. I imagine you don't. I am her father, and yet you still have not given me a single piece of proof. Marcus reached into his coat pocket, then stopped. When his hand came out, it was empty. My wallet is in my truck. David, William said, keeping his eyes on Marcus. Where is his truck? David looked around. I don't see any truck nearby, sir. Marcus shifted his weight. It's parked close by. Then we will wait for the police to help you retrieve it. That was when Marcus's face changed. Not much, but enough for everyone to see. The sweet voice had carried him this far. But the papers, if he had any, were not ready. His story had holes in it, and William had found one wide enough to break it open. Annie whispered, He has nothing. Marcus snapped his eyes toward her. Shut up. William stepped fully in front of Annie again. This time, he stood firm. No, he said. She has proven more than you have. Marcus's nostrils flared. You have no idea what you are doing. William touched the small button on his Bluetooth earpiece without looking away. David, he said calmly. Call it in. Keep your voice low. Tell them we need an officer at the rear parking lot of the Mill Creek Grand Hotel. Possible stalking, possible false guardianship claim, and make sure dispatch knows that the young woman clearly states she does not know this man. Marcus's face hardened. You are going to regret this. William looked at Annie's groceries scattered across the snow, then back at Marcus. Maybe, he said, but living with regret is easier than handing a frightened person over to a man who cannot prove he has any right to take her. Annie let out a breath so small William almost did not hear it, but Marcus heard it, and his face changed again. The first patrol car arrived without its siren. Its tires rolled slowly into the rear parking lot, crunching over the thin layer of snow with a dry, brittle sound. The red and blue lights on the roof stayed off until the car stopped near the wall of the laundromat. William saw it. Marcus saw it too. David stood a few steps away from the SUV, his phone still in his hand. The police are here, sir. Annie moved closer to the SUV's rear door, but she did not get inside. William had told her no one would force her into the car, and she seemed to be holding on to that promise, like one last fragile thread. Both hands clutched at her coat, her fingers curled from the cold and fear. If Annie's fear touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what you think William should do next. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. A young officer stepped out of the patrol car. He was white, probably in his early 30s. His name tag read Reed. He looked at Marcus first, then at William. Only after that did he look at Annie. That order told William more than the officer probably meant to reveal. Good evening, Officer Reed said. Who called this in? I did, David answered. William added, at my request. Marcus raised both hands slightly, palms out. He stepped immediately into the role he had chosen. Officer, thank God. I'm very sorry you had to come out in this weather. My daughter is having a panic episode. I'm just trying to get her home before things get worse. Annie's head snapped up. I am not your daughter. Marcus turned to her with the tired patience of a man performing for an audience. Annie, sweetheart, don't start again. I'm not starting anything. I don't know you. Reed looked at Annie. Ma'am, I'll speak with you in a moment. Marcus heard that and smoothly stepped in. Her name is Annie Carter. She gets frightened and says things she doesn't mean. Her mother and I have been trying to deal with this for months. You and my mother are nothing to each other, Annie said. You don't have the right to say her name like that. Marcus sighed. Officer, you see what I mean. When she gets worked up, she denies family. I am her father. I know how this looks, but I am her father. No, Annie said louder. My father's name was Robert Carter. He is dead. This man is lying. Marcus did not even look embarrassed. That was her mother's first husband. Annie has always had a hard time accepting me. I never accepted you, because I never knew you. Reed raised one hand. All right, one at a time. William quietly watched the way Reed followed the performance. Marcus was good, not loud, not panicked, not overly angry. He was giving the officer a familiar picture to hold on to. A worried father, a troubled young woman, and a rich stranger making everything more complicated. Every time Annie denied him, Marcus turned that denial into another symptom. It was a clever trap, and William could see how many times that trap must have worked before. Reed turned to William. Sir, can you tell me what happened? William kept his voice calm. I found her crouched behind my vehicle. She said a man had followed her from the store and begged me not to let him find her. Mr. Vale approached, claimed to be her father, and she immediately denied knowing him. Marcus let out a short laugh, restrained but edged with irritation. That is not accurate. She knows me. She is my daughter. She is upset. I don't know him, Annie said again. This time, she stepped half a pace out from behind William. Her voice trembled, but she faced Reed directly. My mother is Angela Carter. My father was Robert Carter. He died when I was little. This man is not my father. He followed me into the store, then followed me out here. I hid because I was afraid. Marcus shook his head. Annie, you are hurting yourself. I'm telling the truth. You are confused. I am not. Marcus turned back to Reed. Officer, I'm telling you, she is my daughter. I raised her as my own. Blood is not the only thing that makes a father. William caught the shift. A moment ago, Marcus had simply said he was her father. Now he was changing the language, creating room for what he could not prove. It seemed Reed heard it too. You said you are her father, Reed said. Are you her biological father? Marcus hesitated only slightly. I am the father in her life. That is not what I asked. Marcus pressed his lips together. No, not biologically. But I am responsible for her. Annie stared at him. You have never been responsible for me. Marcus's voice sharpened. That is enough, Annie. William took one small but deliberate step forward, planting himself more firmly between them. Don't speak to her that way. Marcus gave him a strained smile. There it is, the hero. Reed cut in. Mr. Vale, do you have any paperwork proving guardianship? Marcus reached into his coat. David shifted slightly. Reed immediately said, Sir, keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus paused, then slowly pulled out a folded paper. I have documentation, not all of it, because I left in a hurry, but enough to show she has medical issues. William watched Marcus's hand. It was too steady. Too steady for a man who had just claimed he had been frantically searching for his missing daughter in the snow. Reed took the paper and held it into the beam of his flashlight. What is this? Discharge paperwork, Marcus said. From a clinic. Annie stared at the paper. I did not go to any clinic tonight. Marcus ignored her. When she is in this state, she doesn't always remember clearly. William said, Officer, may I point something out? Reed glanced at him. Go ahead. She is standing here clearly telling you who her mother is, who her father is, why she went to the store, and what she bought. He has changed his statement from saying he is her father to saying he is the father in her life. So far, he has not produced any current, verifiable documentation proving legal authority over her. Marcus turned his head slowly. You should stop speaking as if you understand my family. She says she is not your family, William replied. For the first time, Marcus's voice rose. She is my daughter. Annie stepped back as if the words themselves had pushed her. Reed looked up from the paper. Mr. Vale. Marcus immediately collected himself. He lowered his voice and placed one hand over his chest. I'm sorry. I'm exhausted. I have been looking for her in the snow. You cannot imagine what it feels like to love a child who turns against you because of illness. I am not sick, Annie said. I only went to buy soup. Reed looked down at the paper again. What clinic did she leave? Northside Behavioral Treatment Center. There is no Northside Behavioral Treatment Center in Mill Creek, Annie said. Marcus answered too quickly. It's outside town. Outside town where? Reed asked. Marcus hesitated. The moment was brief, but in that brief moment, the lie lost some of its smoothness. The Lancaster area, that is more than an hour away, Reed said. You mean she left a clinic near Lancaster, came to Mill Creek, bought groceries, and you happened to find her here? Marcus began to look irritated. This is more complicated than that. It isn't complicated, Annie said. I live here. I walked to the store. I have the receipt in my pocket. David said nothing. He bent down, picked up the torn grocery bag, and found the damp receipt stuck to the carton of milk. He handed it to William, and William handed it to Reed. Reed read it. Monroe Market, tonight, 7:46 p.m. I told you, Annie said softly. Marcus smiled at the officer, but sweat had begun to bead along his hairline despite the cold. Officer, a grocery receipt does not prove she is well. It also does not change the fact that she is my daughter and I am trying to keep her safe. You keep repeating that, William said. Because it is true. Then prove it. Marcus's eyes snapped to him. Reed folded the receipt carefully. Miss Carter, do you have identification? Annie reached into her coat pocket with a trembling hand. Reed watched her hand but did not tell her to stop. She pulled out a state ID and handed it to him. Reed looked at the card, then at her. Annie Carter, address on Maple Street? Yes. Is your mother at that address now? She should be. She's sick. She didn't answer when I called. Marcus cut in. Because Angela is not well enough to handle this tonight. She has a fever, and she is confused too. That is why I had to come looking for Annie. Annie turned sharply toward him. You came here because my mother told you to stay away from us. The parking lot suddenly went quiet. Reed looked from Annie to Marcus. Is that true? Marcus lowered his voice again. Angela and I have had disagreements. Every family does. You are not my family, Annie said. You wanted to be, but my mother said no. For the first time, Marcus's eyes changed in front of the officer. The mask did not disappear completely, but it opened just enough. His mouth tightened. His shoulders straightened. He no longer looked like a worried father. He looked like a man who had just been denied something he believed belonged to him. William saw Reed see it too. Reed handed Annie's ID back to her. Mr. Vale, do you have identification? Marcus handed him his driver's license. Reed read it, then looked toward the patrol car. I'm going to run both IDs and verify what I can. No one leaves until I'm finished. Marcus stiffened. Officer, she needs to come with me. No one is going anywhere yet. She is mentally unstable. She is standing right here, William said, and she has answered every question far more clearly than you have. Marcus glared at him. You think money makes you a judge? No, William said. But common sense still works in a parking lot. Reed looked at Annie. She was crying silently, but she was still standing. One hand rested on the open SUV door. She was not inside the car, not restrained, and not speaking incoherently. Then Reed looked at Marcus. The harder you push, the less it helps your case. Marcus's jaw twitched once. William removed his leather gloves and placed them in his coat pocket. He did it slowly, keeping both hands visible. Officer, he said, while you check the IDs, I would like my attorney on the phone. Not to interfere, only to make sure what she says is recorded accurately. Marcus gave a bitter smile. Of course. The billionaire brings in a lawyer. William looked at him. This young woman has told the truth. I am only making sure that truth does not get buried. Annie looked at William then. It was not quite trust yet, but it was the first fragile sign that trust might begin. Reed returned to his patrol car. The radio crackled as he opened the door. Marcus stood beneath the yellow light, no longer smiling. David remained beside the SUV. William stood between Annie and the man who still insisted he was her father, even after every word Annie had spoken denied it. A hard gust of wind swept through the parking lot and lifted the edge of the receipt in Reed's hand before he shut himself inside the patrol car. Annie spoke without raising her head. He'll make them believe him. William watched Marcus. Marcus was watching Annie too. Maybe he usually does, William said, but not before we ask the next question. Officer Reed sat inside his cruiser longer than anyone expected. Through the windshield, William could see the officer speaking into his radio, then looking down at the two IDs in his hand. then back toward the lot. The heater inside the patrol car had begun to fog the lower corners of the glass. Outside, the rest of them stood in the cold with their breath rising and fading, 4 people held in place by a story that had not yet decided who owned it. Marcus kept his hands visible, but his eyes did not rest. They moved to Annie, to William, to David, to the hotel door, then back to the cruiser. He was not pacing. Pacing would have shown nerves. Instead, he stood still with the discipline of a man who understood how to appear patient while everything inside him adjusted. Annie noticed too. "He's thinking," she whispered. William did not look away from Marcus. "About what?" What to say next? There was no bitterness in her voice. Just knowledge. That troubled William more than panic would have. David stood near the SUV, the rear door still open, one hand resting on the roof. "Miss Carter, you can sit inside if you're cold." "Door stays open." Annie shook her head. "I don't want him saying I got in willingly." David glanced at William. William gave a slight nod. She was right to think that way. Marcus had already turned groceries into instability and fear into illness. A car door could become a kidnapping if the wrong man described it first. Marcus heard enough to smile. "See, officer?" He called toward the cruiser, though Reed could not hear him through the glass. "This is what she does. She builds stories around everything." William turned his head. "You're speaking to me now." Marcus's smile sharpened. "No, Mr. Hawthorne. I'm speaking near you. There's a difference." Annie pulled her coat tighter. "Please stop talking to him." "I'm not afraid of him," William said softly. "I know," she said. "That's not why." He looked at her then. She kept her eyes on the ground. "He likes it when people argue. He gets them mad. Then he acts calm. Then they look crazy. And he looks normal." William felt something cold move through him that had nothing to do with the weather. Caroline had once described that exact thing. Though not in those words, she had said, "He waits until I'm crying, then asks why I'm hysterical." William had been too young or too proud to understand that some people did not win arguments by being right. They won by arranging the room so the other person looked wrong. Reed opened the cruiser door and stepped out. Marcus straightened at once, turning his face back into concern. "Officer?" Reed walked toward them slowly, one hand resting near his belt, not on his weapon. "Mr. Vale, dispatch can't confirm any active clinic release under Annie Carter's name tonight." Marcus blinked once. "That may be because of privacy rules. Medical facilities don't always give information over the phone. They also don't usually release patients and then lose track of them across county lines inside an hour. As I said, it's complicated." Reed looked at Annie. "Miss Carter, your ID checks out. Maple Street address. No warrants. Nothing active." Annie gave a short nod, but relief did not reach her face. Reed turned back to Marcus. "Your license checks out too." Marcus Vale. Lancaster address. William heard the location and filed it away. Lancaster was not Mill Creek. Not close enough for a man to simply be passing by the same store at the same hour. "Unless there was a reason," Reed continued. "I'm also not seeing anything tying you legally to Miss Carter." Marcus spread his hands. "Because not every family situation fits neatly into a computer." "No," Reed said. "But guardianship usually does." Marcus's mouth tightened. "I never said I had court guardianship." Annie's head snapped up. "You said you were my father. I am the man who has been there for you." "No, you're the man my mom told to leave us alone." Marcus turned on her. "Your mother needed help before I came along. My mother works 12-hour shifts taking care of old people who don't have anybody else," Annie said. Her voice shook, but anger had given it a spine. "She never needed you." For one clean second, the lot showed Marcus as he was. His face hardened, and the careful sadness vanished. "You have no idea what your mother needed." William stepped slightly toward Annie, enough that Marcus's eyes came back to him. Reed saw it. "Mr. Vale, I'm going to ask you to keep your voice down." Marcus inhaled, held it, then softened again. "I'm sorry. I'm worried. She's a child to me." "She's not a child," Reed said, "and unless you can show legal authority, she is not required to go anywhere with you." That sentence changed the air. Annie looked at Reed as if she had not expected those words from someone in uniform. William saw the moment land in her, not as victory, but as the first inch of floor beneath her feet. Marcus saw it too, and hated it. "You're making a mistake," he said to Reed. "A serious one. When this goes bad, it won't be on me." "What exactly do you think is going to go bad?" William asked. Marcus turned to him. "You still think this is about you?" "No, I think you wish it were. Men like you prefer fighting other men. It keeps you from answering the young woman standing 3 feet away." Marcus laughed once. "Men like me? You don't know anything about me. I know you followed her from a store. I came after my daughter. You can't prove that. I don't owe you proof. You owe her distance." The words came out before William had planned them. Quiet, plain. They surprised Annie. They angered Marcus. They made Reed look at William with something closer to assessment than suspicion. Marcus stepped closer, and David moved at the same time. Reed lifted a hand. "Everybody stay where you are." Marcus stopped, but his eyes stayed on William. "You are very comfortable giving orders." "I've had practice," William said, "and maybe that works in your towers and hotels. But this is a town, Mr. Hawthorne. People here know when outsiders come in and start making trouble." William almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Interesting. A minute ago you were her father. Now I'm an outsider." Marcus's jaw flexed. Reed's radio crackled. He turned slightly, listened, then answered with a short code. His face changed as he listened to the reply. "Not much, but enough that William caught it." "What is it?" William asked. Reed did not answer him. He looked at Marcus. "Dispatch reached Mill Creek General. No record of Annie Carter being admitted or discharged today. They also checked Northside Behavioral. Closest facility by that name is not in Lancaster County, and they have no after-hours discharge matching what you described." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Then someone gave you incomplete information." "Maybe," Reed said. "Or maybe you did." That was the first time the officer put weight on Marcus instead of Annie. Annie covered her mouth with one hand. She was not crying now. She was trying not to. William knew better than to call it over. Men like Marcus did not surrender because one lie failed. They reached for the next one. Sure enough, Marcus's face changed. He stopped playing tired father and became something else. "Insulted citizen, Officer Reed," he said, reading the nameplate. "I don't know how much experience you have with disturbed young people, but I know Annie. I know Angela. I know this family. You are letting a frightened girl and a rich man with a savior complex turn a medical emergency into a public scene." Reed's face reddened slightly, but he stayed measured. "And I'm asking you to provide proof. I told you, my wallet with more documents is in my truck." "Then where is your truck?" "Around the corner." "Which corner?" Marcus hesitated again. William saw it, and this time so did Annie. Her voice came out small but clear. "He didn't drive here. He was already outside when I came out." Reed looked at her. "You're sure?" "Yes. He was standing near the newspaper box, like he was waiting." Marcus pointed at her. "That is a lie." "Don't point at her," David said. It was the first full sentence David had spoken since the officer arrived. His voice was low, rough, and older than the snow around them. Marcus lowered his hand, but slowly, as if doing so were a favor. Reed looked toward the grocery store, then the corner, then Marcus. "Mr. Vale, I'm going to ask you to stand by my cruiser." Marcus did not move. "Am I being detained?" "You're being separated while I sort this out." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that the woman you claim is your daughter says she doesn't know you. Your medical story isn't checking out, and you keep insisting on taking her somewhere." Marcus smiled without warmth. "Careful, officer. You're letting him lead you." Reed glanced at William. "Mr. Hawthorne isn't the one whose story keeps changing." Marcus held Reed's stare for 2 seconds, then walked toward the cruiser. Not defeated, rearranging. William could feel it. So could Annie. Because she whispered, "He's not done." "No," William said, "he isn't." Reed came back to them, lowering his voice. "Miss Carter, is there someone I can call for you besides your mother?" Annie shook her head. "It's just us." "Try her again." Annie pulled out her phone. Her fingers trembled so much she misdialed the first time. On the second try, the call rang and rang, then went to voicemail. Annie closed her eyes. "Mom, It's me. I'm okay. I'm with police. Please call me. Please. She ended the call and looked smaller after it, as if the unanswered phone had taken something from her. William looked at the soup can in the torn bag, the cold medicine, the oranges, a sick mother at home, a daughter trying to return, a man from another city insisting he owned the route between them. He turned to Reed. Officer, can you send someone to the Maple Street address for a welfare check? Reed nodded. I can request it. Marcus, from near the cruiser, called out. That won't be necessary. Angela doesn't need strangers at her door. Annie stiffened. William looked at Marcus across the lot. That sounded less like concern than fear. Marcus smiled again, but now it was thin enough to cut. Reed spoke into his radio. The request went out into the cold night, toward Maple Street, toward the small house where Angela Carter was not answering her phone. Annie stood beside the open SUV door and whispered, almost to herself, "Please pick up, Mom." No one answered that prayer in the parking lot. Not yet. The call to Maple Street changed Marcus more than the questions had. He stood near the patrol car with his arms folded, trying to look like a patient man being unfairly delayed, but his eyes kept going to Officer Reed's radio. Every time it crackled, his jaw moved. William watched him and understood something useful. Marcus was not afraid of being challenged in the parking lot. He was afraid of what might be found somewhere else. Reed noticed it too. He kept his body angled so he could see Marcus and Annie at the same time. Unit 3 is heading to Maple Street, Reed said. They'll knock, check on Angela Carter, and report back. Marcus gave a short laugh. At this hour, she's sick. You're going to frighten her because a stranger with money decided to play detective? Annie stepped forward before William could answer. You don't get to worry about my mom. Marcus's face softened at once, but it was only for the officer. Annie, sweetheart, I have worried about both of you for a long time. No, she said. You watched us. That's not the same thing. The words landed cleanly. Reed looked at Marcus, waiting for him to respond. Marcus did not. He looked past Annie toward the road, where snow blew in thin sheets across the entrance to the lot. William's phone vibrated. The screen showed Harold Finch. He answered on the first ring. Harold, I'm on speaker? No. Good. Don't put me on. Tell me what's happening. William turned slightly away from Marcus, keeping his eyes on Annie. Officer on scene. Man claims to be her father. No proof. Medical story isn't checking out. She says her mother is sick at home. Officer has sent a unit there. Harold was silent for half a second. He was 62, cautious to the point of irritation, and had saved William from enough lawsuits to earn the right to speak plainly. Is the young woman an adult? Yes. Then no one takes her anywhere unless she consents or police have lawful grounds. Does the man have guardianship papers? Not so far. Then keep her visible. Keep your hands to yourself. And do not put her inside your vehicle, unless the officer instructs it, or there is an immediate threat. You understand me? I do. And William? Yes? Do not let pride get involved. Men like this want you angry. William looked at Marcus. I've been warned. Harold exhaled. I'll start checking Marcus Vale. Text me a photo of his license if you can get it lawfully. And ask the officer if a female detective or supervisor can respond. A stalking claim with a disputed identity should not be handled like a runaway teenager. She says he followed her. Then use that word, followed, not family argument, not misunderstanding. William ended the call and stepped back toward Reed. Officer, my attorney advises that this be treated as a possible stalking incident until verified. He also suggests calling a supervisor or detective, preferably someone familiar with harassment cases. Marcus clapped once, softly. Beautiful. Now the attorney is giving orders to the police. Reed looked at him. He made a request. I'll decide what to do with it. Marcus smiled. Of course. Reed lifted his radio and requested a supervisor. His voice stayed flat, but William could hear the shift in him. The officer was no longer trying to smooth over a family dispute. He was building a record. Annie stood near the SUV, staring at her phone. She had called her mother 3 more times. No answer. Each failed call seemed to pull her inward. William moved closer but kept a respectful distance. Annie. She looked up. Does your mother know this man is here tonight? No. I didn't tell her at first. She was sick, and I didn't want to scare her. Has he been to your house? Her eyes flicked to Marcus. Yes, Marcus spoke from near the cruiser. I've brought groceries. I've helped when Angela needed it. You sat outside, Annie said, sometimes for an hour, sometimes more. That's absurd. You parked across the street with your lights off. Marcus's mouth tightened. You're repeating things your mother put in your head. Annie's voice cracked. My mother told you no. That was the second time she said it, and the second time Marcus's control thinned. Reed noticed again. Mr. Vale, stay by the cruiser. I am by the cruiser. Then stay quiet unless I ask you something. Marcus looked at him as if he had just been insulted in his own home. Still, he said nothing. A gust of wind cut through the lot. Annie shivered. David reached into the SUV and pulled out a folded wool blanket from the emergency kit. Miss Carter, he said, I'm going to set this on the open door. You can take it if you want. He did exactly that, placing it over the edge of the door and stepping back. Annie looked at the blanket, then at William, as if asking whether accepting it would be used against her. William understood. Your choice. After a moment, she took it and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her hands disappeared into the gray wool. She looked young then, not because of her age, but because fear had stripped away the everyday armor people used to move through the world. Reed's radio crackled. Unit 3 to Reed. Reed answered at once. Go ahead. The voice came through with static. At Maple Street address. Lights on inside. Female resident located. Angela Carter. She's conscious, feverish. Says daughter went to buy food and hasn't returned. She is asking if Annie is safe. Annie covered her mouth. Mom. Reed looked at her. She's safe enough to speak? Affirmative. She states Marcus Vale is not family. Repeating, not family. She says he has been told to stay away from her and her daughter. The lot went silent, except for the engine of the cruiser. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with a new expression already forming. She's ill. She doesn't understand what she's saying. Reed turned toward him. That's your answer to everyone who contradicts you? Marcus did not reply. Annie's knees seemed to loosen. William reached out, stopped before touching her, and asked, Are you all right? She nodded, but tears slid down her face. She knows. She knows I didn't just disappear. Reed spoke into the radio. Can Angela Carter come to the scene? Static. Then the reply. She insists on coming. We advised medical attention. She refused. Neighbor is driving her. Annie shook her head. She's too sick. She wants to see you, Reed said. Marcus stepped away from the cruiser. Officer, that is a terrible idea. Angela is emotional. You'll make this worse. Reed's hand moved slightly toward his belt. I told you to stay put. Marcus stopped, but the mask was gone now. You people have no idea what you're interfering with. William looked at him. There it is. Marcus turned. What? The first honest thing you've said tonight. Before Marcus could answer, another set of headlights appeared at the entrance to the lot. Not a patrol car this time. An older blue sedan, moving too fast for the slick pavement, braked hard beside the market. The driver's door opened first, then the passenger door. Angela Carter stepped out into the snow-wearing house slippers, a winter coat thrown over pajamas, and the exhausted face of a mother who had spent the last 20 minutes imagining the worst thing in the world. Annie, she called. Annie ran before anyone could stop her. William watched mother and daughter meet under the parking lot light, Annie folding into Angela's arms, Angela holding her as if the cold, the police, the billionaire, and the man by the cruiser had all vanished. Then Angela lifted her head and saw Marcus. Her face changed. Not with surprise, but with a weariness so old it looked carved into her. You, she said. Marcus's voice became soft again. Angela. I was only trying to help. Angela kept one arm around Annie and looked at Officer Reed. That man is not her father. He is not her family. And if he told you different, he lied. William heard the force beneath her fevered voice and knew the night had entered a different room. Marcus could no longer speak about Angela, as if she were absent. She was here now, and she was looking straight at him. Angela Carter did not look like a woman ready for a fight. She looked sick. Her hair was pulled back in a loose scarf, her coat was buttoned wrong, and the slippers on her feet were already wet from the snow. She had one arm wrapped around Annie and the other pressed against her own ribs as if holding herself upright took effort. But when she looked at Marcus Vale, there was no weakness in her eyes. Officer Reed stepped closer. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Reed. I need to ask you a few questions." Angela nodded once without taking her eyes off Marcus. "Ask." Marcus gave a quiet sigh. "Angela, you should be in bed. You're feverish. You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying," Angela said. "You are not Annie's father. You are not her stepfather. You are not her guardian. You are a man I told to leave us alone." Annie clung tighter to her mother. Reed looked at Marcus. "You told me you were her father." Marcus lifted his hands again, but this time the gesture had less grace. "In every way that matters, I've helped this family. I've been there when Angela couldn't manage things." Angela let out a tired laugh, and there was no humor in it. "You mean when you showed up at my job after I stopped answering your calls? When you parked across from my house until midnight? When you told my supervisor I was unstable because I wouldn't go to dinner with you?" Marcus's mouth tightened. "That is not what happened." "It is exactly what happened." William stood a few feet away, listening. He noticed Annie's face as Angela spoke. The fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Confirmation. Not relief yet. Relief was too expensive for people who had been frightened too long. But Annie was hearing her mother say out loud what Marcus had tried to turn into confusion. Reed took out a small notebook. "Mrs. Carter, has Mr. Vale been told not to contact you?" "Yes." "By you directly?" "Many times." "In writing?" Angela hesitated, and Marcus saw it. His voice softened at once. "You see, officer? There's no order, no paperwork, just misunderstandings and emotions." Angela turned to him. "There are text messages." Marcus went still. William caught it. So did David. Reed looked up. "You have messages?" "In my phone. Some from his number, some from numbers I didn't recognize until he used the same words in person. I didn't always save them. I was tired. I thought if I ignored him, he'd get bored." Marcus shook his head. "This is embarrassing. Angela, please, don't do this to yourself." "To myself?" she said. "You followed my daughter. I found her. You followed her. She was wandering alone at night. She was buying soup for me." That stopped him for a beat. Annie bent and picked up the torn grocery bag. Her hands shook, but she held it out like evidence. "I bought chicken soup, cold medicine, oranges. I was going home." Reed took the bag gently, looked inside, then gave it back. "I have the receipt." Angela looked at Annie, then at the soup can wet with melted snow, and something in her face broke for half a second. She pulled her daughter close again. "Baby, I'm sorry." "No," Annie said into her coat. "Don't be." Marcus watched them, and the look on his face changed in a way William did not like. Not sadness. Not shame. Ownership denied. Reed's radio crackled, and he stepped aside to answer. Angela swayed slightly. William moved half a step forward, but stopped before touching her. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "would you like to sit in the SUV while Officer Reed sorts this out? The door will stay open." Angela looked at him for the first time, really looked. She saw the coat, the car, David, the sort of money that usually arrived with control attached. Suspicion crossed her face because life had taught her to put it there. "Who are you?" she asked. "William Hawthorne." Recognition flickered, but she did not look impressed. "And why are you involved?" "Your daughter hid behind my car." Angela's eyes went to Annie. Annie said, "He didn't make me get in. He didn't touch me. He asked who I was talking about. I told him." Angela looked back at William. "Thank you for not handing her over." The words were simple, but they carried weight. William accepted them with a small nod. She was very clear about not knowing him. Marcus laughed under his breath. "Of course she was. She's been coached." Angela's head turned slowly. "By who, Marcus?" "Me? While I was home with a fever, waiting for my daughter to bring me dinner?" Marcus looked toward Reed, who was still speaking into the radio. "Officer, I'd like it noted that she is hostile and emotionally unstable." William's expression changed. There it is again. Marcus looked at him. Excuse me? Every woman who contradicts you becomes unstable. Angela's eyes moved to William, then back to Marcus. That's how he does it, Reed returned. A supervisor is on the way. Detective Bennett is also responding from the north side. Marcus's face tightened. A detective? For what? A family disagreement? Reed answered without heat. For a possible stalking complaint, disputed identity, false medical claim, and conflicting statements about guardianship. Marcus stared at him. You're making this bigger than it is. No, Angela said. It was always this big. People just kept trying to make it small. That sentence settled over the lot. William felt it the way he had felt truth in rooms where everyone else wanted numbers instead. Reed turned to Annie. Miss Carter, do you have your phone? Annie nodded. Do you have anything from Mr. Vale? Messages, photos, calls? She hesitated. Her thumb pressed against the side of the phone in her pocket. William could see the conflict. Evidence was safety, but it was also exposure. Once she opened that phone, the private fear became public record. Angela touched Annie's cheek. Only what you're ready to show, Annie whispered. What if he says I made it up? Then we show them what he wrote, Angela said. Marcus stepped forward. Annie, think very carefully. David moved before William had to speak. He did not touch Marcus. He simply placed himself in the space between Marcus and the Carters. Reed's voice hardened. Mr. Vale, back by the cruiser. Now. Marcus looked at David. Annie pulled out her phone. The screen lit her face pale blue. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked it. There are numbers I blocked, she said. He kept changing them. Reed moved closer but gave her space. Take your time. Annie opened a thread with no contact name, only a phone number. The first message on the screen was short. Tell your mother I'm done being ignored. Angela closed her eyes. Annie scrolled. She doesn't get to shut me out. Then another. If she won't answer me, maybe she'll answer for you. Reed's face changed. William felt David go still beside him. Marcus spoke quickly from the cruiser. Anyone can send a text. Annie looked up. There's more. She opened her photos. One image showed Marcus's car across the street from their house, half hidden beneath a maple tree. Another showed him outside the side entrance of Angela's workplace. A third showed the reflection of his face in the grocery store window behind Annie's own faint reflection. Reed took a slow breath. Miss Carter, I'm going to need these preserved. Marcus's voice sharpened. This is ridiculous. Annie flinched, but she did not close the phone. Then she opened an audio file. I recorded this last week. Angela's hand found Annie's shoulder. The recording began with wind and traffic. Then Marcus's voice, close and low. Your mother needs to stop pretending she can keep me outside her life. I was good to her. I can be good to both of you, but she has to learn. The parking lot seemed to shrink around the sound. Reed looked at Marcus. Is that your voice? Marcus said nothing. The lights of another vehicle turned into the lot, slower this time. An unmarked sedan, dark blue, with a dashboard light that flashed once before going still. Officer Reed looked relieved for the first time that night. A woman stepped out, mid-40s, in a plain coat, badge clipped at her belt. She took in Marcus by the cruiser, Angela holding Annie, William near the SUV, David standing watch, and the groceries melting into the snow. I'm Detective Bennett, she said. Somebody start at the beginning. Annie looked at William, then at her mother. For the first time all night, she did not hide behind anyone when she spoke. He followed me from the store, she said. And he is not my father. Detective Bennett did not ask Annie to repeat herself right away. She looked first at Officer Reed. Has anyone been searched? No, Reed said. No weapons visible. Mr. Vale was asked to remain by the cruiser. Miss Carter has been cooperative. Mrs. Carter arrived from Maple Street. Mr. Hawthorne was the reporting party. Bennett nodded, then turned to Marcus. Mr. Vale, keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus gave her a wounded look. Detective, I'm the one who's been trying to prevent a situation. I heard you the first time, Bennett said, though he had not spoken to her yet. People who are trying to prevent situations usually tell me that early. William almost smiled. He did not. Marcus noticed anyway. Bennett moved to Annie and Angela, stopping a few feet away. She did not crowd them. Annie Carter? Annie nodded. I'm Laura Bennett. I'm going to ask questions, but you can take a breath before you answer. You're not in trouble. Annie looked at Officer Reed as if checking whether that statement could be trusted. Reed gave a small nod. Angela's hand stayed on her daughter's shoulder. Bennett pointed toward the phone in Annie's hand. Officer Reed said you have messages and photos. Before I look at them, I need to ask. Is this your phone? Yes. Do you consent to show me what you showed Officer Reed? Yes. Do you understand I may need to preserve the evidence? Annie swallowed. Does that mean you take my phone? Maybe for a short time? Maybe we copy the relevant material another way. I'll explain before anything happens. That answer seemed to matter. Annie nodded and handed over the phone. Marcus spoke from near the cruiser. Detective, I object to a stranger's phone being treated as evidence without context. Bennett did not look up. Are you her attorney? No. Then you don't object. You comment. David coughed once into his glove. William kept his eyes on Marcus. Bennett scrolled slowly, reading the messages. Her face did not give much away. She opened the photos, then the audio file. Marcus's recorded voice came through again, thinner from the phone speaker but clear enough. Your mother needs to stop pretending she can keep me outside her life. Angela looked away. Bennett stopped the recording. Mr. Vale, is that you? Marcus lifted his chin. It sounds like me, but recordings can be edited. Did you send these messages? I don't recognize that number. Did you tell Annie Carter that her mother would answer for her? No. Did you follow her from Monroe's Market tonight? I followed my daughter because she was not safe. Bennett looked up then. Your daughter? Marcus held her stare. Yes. Annie's voice cut through the cold. I am not your daughter. Bennett turned slightly toward her. I heard you. Marcus pressed on, as if repeating the lie could make it solid. I have been in her life. Angela knows that. Annie is upset. This is what happens. She turns everything into an attack. Angela laughed once, weak from fever but sharp enough. You were never in our life, Marcus. You kept trying to get in after I told you no. That is not fair. No, Angela said. What's not fair is you making my child hide behind a stranger's car. Bennett handed the phone back to Annie for the moment. Mrs. Carter, I need to understand the history. How do you know Mr. Vale? Angela took a breath. It made her cough. Annie tried to steady her, but Angela shook her head. I worked at St. Agnes, home care, then part-time at the hospital. Marcus was security. He started walking me to my car. At first, I thought he was being kind. Then he started waiting when I didn't ask him. He brought coffee I never asked for. He found out where I lived. Marcus looked at Bennett. I was concerned for her safety. Angela ignored him. I told him I wasn't interested. He said I was just scared because I'd been alone too long. I told him no again. After that, he changed. He would call from blocked numbers. He'd show up at the grocery store, at church, outside patients' houses when I worked late. Bennett wrote without interrupting. Did you report it? Yes. Once at St. Agnes. Once here. The hospital moved him quietly. The local report didn't go anywhere. Why not? Angela glanced at Marcus, then down at the snow. Because he never hit me. Because he smiled. Because he said I misunderstood. Because I'm a tired black woman with bills. And he knew how to sound reasonable. No one spoke for a moment. William looked at Officer Reed. The young officer did not look away, but the color had risen in his face. There were lessons a man could learn only when he stood close enough to see the cost of his assumptions. Bennett's voice stayed calm. Did Mr. Vale ever have legal guardianship of Annie? No. Did he ever live with you? No. Did you ever give him permission to pick Annie up, transport her, or make medical decisions for her? Never. Bennett turned to Marcus. Do you have any document that contradicts what Mrs. Carter just said? Marcus's eyes moved from Bennett to Reed to William. Not on me. You told Officer Reed you had a discharge note. I showed him what I had. A discharge note from a clinic that cannot be verified. The officer made one call. I'll make more than one, Bennett said. That isn't your biggest problem. Marcus's voice lowered. And what is? You claimed to be her father. Then you admitted you weren't biological. Then you implied some kind of responsibility. Now the mother says, you had none. That is a lot of movement in one story. Marcus smiled coldly. Stories move when people interrupt them. Bennett held his gaze. Truth usually doesn't. Annie's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down and went still. Angela saw her face. What is it? Annie turned the screen toward Bennett. A new text had arrived from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Angela whispered. Oh my God. Marcus frowned too quickly. That could be anyone. Bennett looked at him. Your phone. What? Take your phone out. Slowly. Marcus hesitated. Reed stepped closer. Do it. Marcus pulled his phone from his coat pocket. His movements stiff now. Bennett held out her hand. Unlock it. I don't consent to a search. I'm not searching it yet. I'm asking you to show me whether you just received or sent a message. No. Bennett nodded once, as if she had expected that. Officer Reed, note the refusal. Reed did. Annie looked at William. He has other numbers. I blocked some. He just uses new ones. Bennett asked, do you still have the blocked list? Yes. Good. Don't delete anything. Marcus shifted toward the curb. David's eyes narrowed. Mr. Vale, Bennett said. Where are you going? Nowhere. I'm cold. So is everyone else. A second police vehicle pulled in, this one with lights flashing once before going dark. An older officer stepped out and spoke briefly with Reed. Bennett looked at Angela's slippers, then at Annie's shaking hands. We're moving this to the station, Bennett said. Annie stiffened. Do I have to ride with him? No, Bennett said. You do not ride with him. You and your mother can ride with Officer Reed, or an ambulance if you want medical attention. Angela shook her head. No ambulance. I'm not leaving Annie. William spoke carefully. Detective, my driver can follow. My attorney is already involved. Marcus scoffed. Of course he is. Bennett looked at William. You can follow, but you don't question witnesses and you don't turn my station into a conference room. Understood. Marcus stepped forward. Detective, this is absurd. You're letting a billionaire and two emotional women build a case out of nothing. Bennett turned back to him. No, Mr. Vale. I'm letting everyone speak where there are cameras, records, and fewer shadows. Marcus's face tightened. Annie held her mother's arm as Reed guided them toward the cruiser. She paused beside the torn grocery bag in the snow. The soup, bread, and oranges were ruined now. William saw her looking. He bent, picked up the bag, and handed it gently to David. Keep it. David nodded. Annie watched the small act and whispered, It was for my mom. William met her eyes. Then we won't let him turn it into something else. For the first time, Annie did not look away. Marcus was placed near the second patrol car, not cuffed yet, but watched. Bennett stood beside him, speaking low enough that William could not hear. Whatever she said made Marcus's face go blank. As the cruiser doors closed, William looked across the lot at the yellow light, the market windows, the wet tire tracks, and the place behind his SUV where Annie had hidden. 10 minutes earlier, it had been only a parking space. Now it felt like the first page of a record someone had tried very hard to keep from being written. David came to his side. Station? William buttoned his coat against the wind. Station. The patrol car carrying Annie and Angela pulled out first. Marcus watched it leave with an expression William recognized from men who had lost a negotiation they believed they owned. Then Marcus looked at William and smiled. It was small, almost polite, but it carried a promise. William got into the SUV and closed the door. The warmth inside felt wrong after the cold. David started the engine and followed the police lights toward downtown Mill Creek, while behind them, the grocery receipt lay sealed in an evidence sleeve on Officer Reed's front seat, damp but readable, refusing to become part of Marcus Vale's story. The Mill Creek police station sat 2 blocks off Main Street, a low brick building with a flagpole out front and salt stains along the walkway. At that hour, it looked less like a place of justice than a place that had stayed awake too long. Fluorescent lights spilled through the front windows. A vending machine glowed in the lobby. Somewhere inside, a phone rang twice and stopped. William's SUV pulled in behind Officer Reed's cruiser. David parked without blocking anyone and killed the engine. For a moment, neither man got out. Through the windshield, William watched Annie step from the patrol car with one hand around her mother's arm. Angela was trying to stand straight, but fever had taken some of the strength from her legs. Annie saw it and shifted closer, letting her own shoulder carry part of her mother's weight. The girl had been shaking in the parking lot, but now she was steady for Angela. That was the way fear worked in families, William thought. Children learn to be strong in the wrong direction. David glanced at him. You want me inside? Yes, but stay back unless I ask. You think Vale's got somebody here? I think a man who lies that smoothly has practiced in front of people who believed him. David nodded once. Then we watched the people, not just him. They got out. Marcus arrived in the second patrol car, still uncuffed, though an older officer stood close enough to make the point. He stepped onto the pavement and adjusted his coat as if he were arriving for an appointment, not being escorted to answer questions. When he saw William, he smiled. Still here? Marcus said. William walked past him. You sound disappointed. I sound surprised. Men like you usually send someone else once things get inconvenient. William stopped at the door and looked back. I did. His name is David. David gave Marcus a flat look, then opened the station door for Annie and Angela. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee, copier toner, and wet wool. A Christmas wreath still hung behind the front desk, though January had already begun to wear thin. An older dispatcher sat behind glass, reading from a monitor. She looked up at Angela's slippers, Annie's pale face, Marcus's polished calm, and William's expensive coat, then decided not to react to any of it. Detective Bennett took control before the lobby could become another stage for Marcus. Mrs. Carter, Miss Carter, this way. Officer Reed, get them water and see if we have a blanket. Mr. Vale, you'll wait in interview 2. Mr. Hawthorne, lobby for now. Marcus turned to Bennett. I'd like to make a statement first. You'll get your chance. I'm making one now. This woman is sick, her daughter is unstable, and that man inserted himself into a family matter he doesn't understand. Angela stopped walking. Annie's grip tightened on her arm, but Angela turned around. Say it again, Marcus. Bennett watched but did not interrupt. Marcus softened his face. Angela, I don't want to embarrass you. You already did when you followed my child. I was trying to bring her home. She has a home, with a mother who can barely stand up tonight. Angela let out a slow breath. That's your trick. You take somebody's hardest day and call it their whole character. For the first time since William had met him, Marcus had no immediate answer. Bennett stepped between them. That's enough for the hallway. Mrs. Carter, with me. Angela turned away, but the effort cost her. Annie put both arms around her waist. Reed appeared with a gray blanket and guided them to a small interview room with a round table, 3 chairs, and a box of tissues that had seen too much use. William remained in the lobby, where he could see through the open blinds but not hear everything. He did not like it. Money had trained him to enter rooms, to sit at tables, to have his name move barriers out of the way. This time, the barrier was proper procedure, and for once he respected it. His phone buzzed. Harold Finch. William answered quietly. We're at the station. Good. Do not give a statement without me on the line. I'm a witness, Harold, not a suspect. You're a rich witness who stood between a man and the girl he claimed was his daughter. That makes you useful to one side and dangerous to the other. Be careful. William looked through the glass as Bennett sat across from Annie and Angela. Reed set water on the table. Annie kept the phone in both hands. Start checking St. Agnes, William said. Marcus Vale worked security there. Angela Carter says he followed her after she rejected him. There may have been a complaint. I'm already on it. William paused. How? You said his name in the parking lot. I listen when clients speak. Find out if he left quietly. That usually means yes. Across the lobby, Marcus sat in the open doorway of interview 2. He leaned back in the chair, one ankle resting over the other knee, acting inconvenienced. But he was watching Annie's room through the blinds. When Annie moved, his eyes moved. When Angela coughed, his mouth tightened. William turned away before he gave Marcus the argument he wanted. In the interview room, Bennett placed a small recorder on the table. This is Detective Laura Bennett. Present are Angela Carter and Annie Carter. Time is 9:12 p.m. Both parties are here voluntarily. Annie, I'm going to ask you again. Do you know Marcus Vale? Annie's voice was low, but it carried enough for William to catch pieces through the cracked door. I know who he is. I don't know him like he says. He's not my father. He never lived with us. He never took care of me. Bennett nodded. When did you first see him? At my mom's work. Maybe 2 years ago. He would talk to her in the parking lot. She didn't like it. But she was polite because that's how she is. Angela looked down. Annie went on. Then he started showing up other places. Grocery store. Church. Once at the bus stop. He said he was just checking on us. Did he ever threaten you directly? Annie looked at her mother before answering. Angela whispered, "Tell it." Annie unlocked her phone. Not always directly. He would say things like, "Your mother makes bad choices," or, "You and I may have to talk if she keeps ignoring me." Last week, he told me my mom would learn faster if I stopped protecting her. Bennett's pen paused. Stopped protecting her? Annie nodded. He thinks I'm the reason she won't see him. Angela closed her eyes. "Baby, it's true," Annie said. "He told me once that if I went away to school, she'd finally understand she was alone." The words came out plain, without drama, which made them worse. Bennett asked, "Did you save that message?" "No, it was in person, outside the pharmacy." Angela put a hand over Annie's. "I didn't know that one. I didn't want you scared." Angela's face folded with pain. But she kept herself together. "I'm your mother. You don't have to protect me from what hurts you." Annie looked at the table. "I know. I just didn't want him to win." In the lobby, William felt the old ache of Caroline again. All the things people hid to spare, the ones they loved. All the ways silence dressed itself as protection. Bennett leaned back. "Mrs. Carter, I'm going to ask you something directly. Did you ever invite Marcus Vale into your family in any parental role?" "No." "Did Annie ever call him Dad?" "Never." "Did Marcus ever have permission to discipline, transport, supervise, or make decisions for Annie?" "No," Bennett wrote. "Did he ever claim otherwise before tonight?" Angela's mouth tightened. "Once. To a neighbor. He said he was practically family. I corrected him. After that, he got colder." A knock came at the room door. Reed stepped in and handed Bennett a printed sheet. Bennett read it, then looked through the blinds toward Marcus. Her expression did not change, but William saw the stillness settle over her. She came out of the room and closed the door behind her. "Mr. Hawthorne," William stood. "Detective, you said your attorney is checking St. Agnes." "Yes. I have a preliminary return. Marcus Vale left St. Agnes after an internal complaint involving unwanted contact with an employee. The employee name is redacted in the initial response, but the timing matches Mrs. Carter's account." Marcus rose from his chair. "That is confidential employment information." Bennett turned. "You heard that from across the hall?" Marcus realized the mistake too late. William said nothing. Bennett looked at him. "Sit down, Mr. Vale." Marcus did not sit. "You're letting them poison this before I've even spoken." "You'll speak." "When?" "When I'm done listening to the people you followed." The lobby went quiet. Even the dispatcher looked up. Marcus's face hardened. "You have no proof I followed anyone." The station phone rang again. The dispatcher answered, listened, then called out, "Detective Bennett? Monroe's market manager is on line 2. Says she has security footage from tonight." Annie heard the words through the door. William saw her lift her head. Marcus heard them too. For the first time all night, he looked afraid. Not of the police station, not of William, not even of Angela's words, but of a camera that had watched without being charmed. Bennett walked to the desk. "Transfer it to my office." Then she looked back at Marcus. Now would be a good time to stop calling this a family matter. Marcus sat down slowly. William stayed where he was, hands at his sides. While inside the interview room, Annie held her mother's hand and waited for the silent witness from the grocery store to speak. Detective Bennett did not play the footage in the lobby. She took the call in her office, wrote down the manager's name, then asked Officer Reed to bring Annie and Angela into the small conference room beside the records desk. It had an old television mounted in one corner, a long table with coffee rings in the finish, and a wall calendar from a local tire shop. The room looked ordinary enough to make terrible things feel even more out of place. William stood near the doorway until Bennett looked at him. "You're a witness," she said. "You can watch from there. Don't speak unless I ask." William nodded. Understood. Marcus sat at the far end of the table with another officer beside him. He had not been handcuffed, but no one was pretending he was free to wander anymore. His coat was open now, his gloves lying on the table, his hands folded with care. The performance had changed. He was no longer the worried father. Now he was the wronged man waiting for the truth to correct everyone else. Annie sat beside Angela. The blanket David had given her was still around her shoulders. Angela's fever had put a sheen on her face, but she refused to leave. When Reed offered to call an ambulance again, she said, "After my daughter is safe." He did not argue. Bennett inserted a flash drive into the television side port. The store manager sent the front door camera and aisle camera. Timestamps matched the receipt. Marcus leaned back. "A camera won't show what was in anyone's mind." "No," Bennett said. "But it can show where your feet were." The first video opened with a view of Monroe's Market from above the register. The image was grainy but clear enough. Annie entered frame carrying a handbasket. She wore the same brown coat and gray knit cap. She went first to the soup aisle, then to the medicine shelf. A few seconds later, Marcus appeared near the end of the aisle. Annie did not see him at first. She picked up a bottle of cold medicine and turned it over to read the label. Marcus stopped where he could see her without appearing to stand directly behind her. He took out his phone, looked at it, then looked back at Annie. Angela whispered, "God." Annie stared at the screen without blinking. Marcus's voice was calm. "People shop in stores, Detective." Bennett did not answer. She let the footage run. Annie moved to the bread shelf. Marcus moved too, keeping one aisle between them. When she paused, he paused. When she looked over her shoulder, he turned toward a display of paper towels as if he had been interested in them all along. William heard David shift behind him in the hall. The old soldier saw the pattern. So did everyone else. Bennett clicked to the next camera. It showed the checkout area. Annie stood at the counter while an older clerk rang up. Soup, bread, medicine, oranges, and milk. Marcus appeared near the newspaper rack inside the door. He did not buy anything. He did not pick anything up. He stood with his hands in his pockets and watched the reflection of Annie in the glass. Reed said quietly, "You told us you found her outside." Marcus's eyes stayed on the screen. "I saw her inside and became concerned. Because she was buying groceries? Because she wasn't supposed to be alone?" Annie turned toward him. "According to who?" Marcus did not look at her. "According to common sense." Angela's voice was low. "No, according to you." The final clip came from the front entrance. Annie walked out first, holding 2 bags. The wind pushed snow across the sidewalk. She moved quickly, head down. Behind her, inside the store, Marcus waited 3 seconds, then followed. Not toward a car, not toward the road, toward Annie. The camera showed her pause near the edge of the lot. She looked back. Marcus slowed and turned his head away, pretending to check the street. Annie walked faster. Marcus followed faster. Bennett froze the frame. No one spoke. The frozen image held Annie mid-step, one paper bag against her hip. Her face turned toward the dark lot. Marcus was 30 feet behind her, angled in the same direction. It was not a family scene. It was not a medical emergency. It was pursuit. Bennett looked at Marcus. "Explain that." Marcus rubbed his thumb along the side of one folded hand. "I already did. I followed because I was concerned. Why not call her mother? She wasn't answering. Why not call police? I didn't want to embarrass them." Angela laughed once, and it turned into a cough. Annie reached for her. Bennett waited until Angela could breathe again. "Mrs. Carter, had you asked Mr. Vale to watch Annie tonight?" "No." "Had you told him Annie was going to the store?" "No." "Did he have any reason to know she would be there?" Angela turned slowly toward Marcus. "That's what I'd like to know." For the first time, Marcus looked at Angela. "You make everything sound ugly." "You made it ugly," she said. His voice softened. "I cared about you. No, you wanted me grateful." That hit him harder than the footage. William saw it. Marcus could endure accusation. He could explain away stalking as concern, false papers as confusion, pursuit as protection, but being seen as needy, rejected, unwanted, that got under his skin. Marcus's eyes narrowed. You think you're better off without me? Angela did not flinch. I know I am. Annie gripped her mother's hand beneath the table. Bennett stepped between the line of sight. Mr. Vale, when did you last contact Angela Carter before tonight? I don't remember, Angela said. This morning. Marcus shot her a look. A text is not contact. Bennett held out her hand toward Angela. May I see it? Angela pulled her phone from her coat pocket. Her fingers were slow from fever. She found the message and slid the phone across the table. Bennett read aloud only what mattered. You wrote, "You can stop pretending that girl is a wall between us." Marcus's face went still. Annie whispered, "That girl." The words hurt her. William could see it. Not because Marcus disliked her. She already knew that. Because he had reduced her to an obstacle in her own mother's life. Bennett continued. Then another message. Sooner or later she'll have to step aside. Angela's voice broke. That's why I didn't answer. I didn't want to feed it anymore. Marcus leaned forward. You ignore people and then act surprised when they get desperate. Reed's head came up. Desperate? Marcus saw the trap a second too late. Bennett's tone stayed even. Desperate enough to follow Annie from a store? I didn't mean it that way. How did you mean it? I meant Angela has a way of pushing people. William finally spoke. Because Bennett had not told him not to. And because the sentence demanded a witness. No. She has a way of saying no. Bennett turned her head slightly toward him. Warning enough. William stopped. Marcus smiled at that. See? He thinks he knows her now. Angela looked at William, not warmly yet, but without suspicion. Then she turned back to Marcus. He knows one thing you never learned. No is a complete sentence. Silence followed, the kind that does not need volume. Bennett removed the flash drive and placed it into an evidence envelope. Mr. Vale, at this point we have contradictory statements. A false or unverifiable clinic claim. Messages from Mrs. Carter's phone, messages and recordings from Annie's phone, and video showing you following Annie through and out of the store. I'm going to advise you to stop talking until you decide whether you want an attorney. Marcus sat back. Am I under arrest? Not yet. Then I'm leaving. No, Bennett said. You're being detained while I determine charges. His calm finally cracked. For walking in a store? For the totality of the situation. That's a convenient phrase. It's an accurate one. Marcus looked toward Reed. You know what this is. She's making it racial because that's what people do now. White man talks to a black woman, and suddenly he's a predator. Annie recoiled as if he had shoved her. Angela's eyes hardened. Don't you dare. Bennett's face changed for the first time. Not anger exactly. A door closing. Mr. Vale, you are not being detained because you're white. You're being detained because the woman you followed says she doesn't know you. The mother says you have no authority. Your story changed 3 times, and the evidence is lining up against you. Don't insult everyone in this room by pretending accountability is persecution. William saw Reed look down, then back up. The young officer was learning fast tonight. Marcus breathed through his nose, slow and controlled, rebuilding the mask piece by piece. I want my lawyer. Bennett nodded. Good choice. As Reed escorted Marcus out of the conference room, Marcus passed behind Annie's chair. He leaned only slightly, not enough for the officer to stop him, and said under his breath, This isn't over. Annie's shoulders locked. Angela stood so fast the chair scraped. What did you say? Marcus kept walking. Nothing. William had heard it. So had David from the doorway. Bennett looked at William. You heard something? Yes. What? William's eyes stayed on Marcus's back. He told her it wasn't over. Bennett's jaw tightened. Reed, hold him. Reed stopped Marcus in the hall. Marcus turned, eyes flat now. I asked for a lawyer, and you threatened a witness on your way out, Bennett said. That changes the room again. For the first time, Marcus did not smile. Annie sat very still, but her hand found her mother's. William looked at the ruined groceries beside the evidence bag, the phones on the table. The frozen image still burned in everyone's mind, and understood that truth had finally begun to move faster than Marcus could dress it up. But Annie's face told him something else. A man like Marcus did not need freedom to remain dangerous. He only needed people to underestimate what he meant when he said it wasn't over. Detective Bennett had Marcus moved to interview 2 with the door closed and an officer posted outside. That alone changed the station. The air did not become safe, but it became clearer. Marcus could no longer stand in the same room and bend every sentence toward himself. Annie noticed the difference first. Her shoulders lowered a little. Angela noticed second, because mothers often waited to breathe until their children did. Bennett returned to the conference room with a fresh legal pad and a paper cup of coffee she did not drink. She sat across from Annie and Angela, not at the head of the table. William stayed near the door with David behind him, present but not crowding. "Annie," Bennett said, "I need to ask about the threat in the hallway. Did you hear what Mr. Vale said?" Annie nodded. "Tell me in your own words." "He said this isn't over. Did you understand that as a threat?" Annie looked at her mother before answering. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he never says the worst thing first. He says something small, then later he shows you what he meant." Angela closed her eyes for a moment. "That's true." Bennett wrote it down. "Has he threatened you before in that way?" "Indirectly?" Annie's hands tightened around the blanket. "He told me once that girls who get between adults end up regretting it." "When was that?" "Outside the pharmacy, maybe 3 weeks ago." "Were you alone?" "Yes." Angela turned toward her. "You never told me that." Annie's mouth trembled. "You were already scared." Angela took Annie's hand. "Baby, I was scared because I didn't know everything. You don't have to carry pieces of this for me." The room went quiet. William looked away, not because he was embarrassed, but because the moment belonged to them. He had been in enough rooms with lawyers to know the difference between information and pain. This was both. Bennett let the silence sit, then asked, "Do you still have the clothes you wore when he came near you at the pharmacy?" Annie blinked, surprised by the practical question. "I think so." "Good. Don't wash them if you wore them again tonight, or if he touched them before. Any contact matters. Any photo matters. Any call matters." "I know that sounds small, but small things build strong cases." Angela looked at Bennett. "Will it be enough?" Bennett did not lie. "It may be. It may take work. But tonight is stronger than most first reports. We have video. We have messages. We have the recording. We have his false claim that Annie was his daughter. We have the unverifiable clinic story. We have the threat in the hallway." William heard the shape of it. Bennett was not offering comfort. She was laying boards across water. Reed entered with a printed page. "Detective," St. Agnes called back. "They won't release full employment details without formal request, but they confirmed Marcus Vale was separated after an internal complaint involving unwanted contact with female staff. They also confirmed Angela Carter was employed there during the same period." Angela's face tightened. "They knew." Bennett looked at her. "Yes. They moved him out quietly, didn't they?" "They didn't say that." Angela gave a tired, bitter smile. "They didn't have to." William felt the line hit him harder than expected. Institutions rarely confessed. They arranged words until no one could point to the body under the carpet. His phone buzzed again. Harold. William stepped just outside the room. "What do you have?" Harold's voice was low and clipped. "Marcus Vale. Former hospital security supervisor at St. Agnes. Left after a confidential settlement. Before that, worked private security in Lancaster. No felony record. 2 harassment complaints that never became charges. 1 civil restraining petition dismissed when the petitioner failed to appear." "Failed to appear?" "Common ending when people get scared." William looked through the glass at Angela and Annie. "Anything connecting him to Angela after St. Agnes?" "I'm working on it. One more thing. He filed a complaint against Angela with her home care agency last year. Claimed she was emotionally unstable and neglecting work duties." William's eyes narrowed. "Was it investigated?" "Closed as unsubstantiated, but it stayed in her employment file." "Of course it did." Harold paused. "William, this man knows how to leave stains without leaving fingerprints." William looked toward interview 2. "Then we make sure tonight leaves fingerprints." He ended the call and returned to the conference room. Bennett looked up. "Anything relevant?" "My attorney found prior complaints and a workplace complaint Marcus filed against Mrs. Carter last year. He says it was closed as unsubstantiated but remained in her employment file." Angela's face changed. "That was him? You didn't know?" She shook her head. My supervisor said a family member raised concerns. I told her I had no family member who would do that. She wouldn't give me a name, Annie whispered. He was trying to get you fired. Angela put a hand to her forehead. Fever and memory hit together. That was the month they cut my hours. Bennett wrote faster now. Mrs. Carter, we'll need your employer's information. Angela nodded. I'll give it. From down the hall came Marcus's voice, muffled through the door but angry enough to carry. I said I want my lawyer. I don't answer anything else. Bennett did not react. Good. He finally took advice. Reed leaned in. Detective, what are we holding him on? Bennett looked at the evidence envelopes on the table. At minimum, false information to law enforcement, harassment, possible stalking, intimidation of a witness. We'll see what the duty ADA wants tonight. Ada? Angela asked. Assistant District Attorney, Bennett said. I'm going to call one before we release anybody. Annie's head lifted. Release? Bennett's face softened by a degree. I'm not saying he's leaving. I'm saying I don't make promises until charges are approved. What I can do is document everything and request emergency protection. Angela squeezed Annie's hand. If he gets out tonight, he'll come to the house. Then we don't let you go back there unprotected, Bennett said. William spoke carefully. I can arrange a hotel. Angela's eyes went to him at once. Guarded again. No, he nodded. All right. The quickness of his acceptance seemed to surprise her. He continued. Then I can arrange nothing unless you ask. But if you need a room under your name, paid without publicity, my attorney can make that happen. If you don't want that, Detective Bennett can advise you on other options. Angela studied him. You always talk like that? Like what? Like you're trying not to sound like you're giving orders. David looked at the floor to hide a smile. William accepted the correction. I've had too much practice giving them. Angela's expression did not soften, but it changed. At least you know. Annie looked between them, confused by the small human turn in the middle of the nightmare. Sometimes that was how trust began, not with speeches, but with one person accepting a boundary without punishing the person who set it. Bennett's desk phone rang. She stepped out and took the call. Through the open door, they heard parts of her side. Yes. Laura Bennett, Mill Creek PD. I need duty review tonight. Disputed guardianship claim. Stalking indicators. Witness intimidation. Yes, video and digital messages. No, he is not the father. Annie closed her eyes at those last words. Not the father. William wondered how many times she had said it that night before someone in authority said it for her. Angela leaned closer to Annie. You hear that? Annie nodded. She said it. I know. You were right to run. Annie wiped her face with the blanket. I was scared you'd be mad. I dropped the food. Angela stared at her, then pulled her into both arms. Lord, child, I don't care about soup. Annie laughed once through tears, and the sound was small but real. Bennett came back in. The ADA agrees we have enough to hold him pending formal review in the morning. We're processing him tonight. I'm also filing for an emergency protective order. Angela, Annie, you should not return home without an officer present. Angela nodded slowly, absorbing it. Marcus's door opened down the hall. Reed and the older officer brought him out. This time his hands were cuffed in front. The metal looked almost ordinary against his dark coat, but his face had gone pale with anger. He saw Angela first. You'll regret this. Bennett's voice cut through the hall. Add that. Marcus snapped his mouth shut. Then he saw Annie. He did not speak, but he did not need to. His stare carried what his mouth had been denied. William stepped into Marcus's line of sight. Marcus smiled at him. You think you saved them? William said, No, I think they told the truth. The older officer guided Marcus toward booking. His shoes squeaked once on the polished floor, then the door closed behind him. Annie sat very still. Angela held her. Bennett looked at William. Mr. Hawthorne, we'll need your written statement. You'll have it, and then you should go home. William looked at Annie, then Angela, then the ruined grocery bag David had placed carefully beside the wall. Detective, he said. I don't think anyone is going home yet. Angela's eyes met his. This time, she did not say no. She only looked tired enough to admit that safety was not Pride's enemy tonight. Bennett picked up her pen again. Then we do the next right thing. Detective Bennett put Angela and Annie in the victim interview room while the paperwork began to move. It was not a warm room, but it was better than the lobby. There was a square table, 4 chairs, a box of tissues, and a small window with blinds that would not close evenly. Someone had taped a child's drawing of a police dog to the filing cabinet years ago, and the edges had curled with age. Angela sat with the blanket around her shoulders now. Because Annie had insisted, Annie sat close enough that their knees touched. William stayed in the hallway with David while Officer Reed brought him the witness statement form. "You can write it here," Reed said, handing him a clipboard. "Start from when you heard her behind your vehicle." William took the pen. "I'll be precise." I figured. There was no insult in Reed's voice. Only fatigue, and something like embarrassment. William began writing. He described the time, the location, Annie's exact words, Marcus's claim, Annie's repeated denial, the groceries, the lack of proof, the false clinic story, the threat in the hallway. He did not add emotion where fact would do. Harold Finch had taught him that years ago. Emotion mattered in life, but in a statement, accuracy carried the weight. Halfway through, Reed said quietly, "Mr. Hawthorne." William looked up. "I should have listened to her sooner." William studied the young officer. "You listened eventually. That's not the same thing." "No," William said. "It isn't." Reed accepted that without defending himself. That made William think better of him. From the interview room, Annie's voice came through the door, low and strained. "Mom, what if he gets out?" Angela answered, but her voice was weaker now. "Then we follow what Detective Bennett says. We don't open the door. We don't answer numbers we don't know. We don't let fear make the decisions for us," Annie said. "Fear has been making decisions for a long time." William stopped writing. Angela did not answer right away. Then she said, "I know, baby." Bennett came down the hall with a folder under one arm and 2 paper cups of water in her hands. She gave one to Reed and kept one for Angela. "Where's Finch?" William held up his phone. "Available." "Good. I'm going to need consent from Angela and Annie to preserve copies of the messages, photos, and audio. I'd rather do it clean than fight over it later." William nodded. "He can listen, but it's their decision." Bennett gave him a quick look, as if she had expected him to overstep and was mildly relieved he did not. She knocked once and entered the room. William remained outside, but the door stayed open. "Angela," Bennett said, setting the water down. "The ADA approved holding Marcus until morning review. That does not mean the whole case is solved. It means tonight, he doesn't walk out behind you." Annie's shoulders lowered a fraction. Angela closed her eyes. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We need to build this right. I need copies of Annie's messages, blocked numbers, photos, the recording, and your messages from Marcus. I also need your permission to contact St. Agnes and your current employer for records connected to complaints he made or complaints you made." Angela's face tightened at the word employer. "If my agency finds out this is police business again, they may cut my shifts." "Maybe," Bennett said. "But if Marcus filed false complaints, that matters." Angela rubbed her forehead. "Rent matters too." William looked down at the half-finished statement in his hand. He could have stepped in easily. He could have said he would cover rent, bills, a new house, a lawyer, college tuition. He could have solved the immediate problem the way he had solved thousands of problems, by putting money in front of it. But Angela's posture warned him. She was not a project. She was a woman trying to keep the shape of her life from being taken by another person. So he said nothing. Annie looked at Bennett. "Can he find us if we go home?" Bennett did not lie. "He knows where you live. Tonight, an officer can escort you. Tomorrow, we can talk about emergency shelter or staying with someone you trust." "We don't really have anyone," Annie said. Angela reached for her hand. "We have each other. I know, but that's how he kept finding us." The sentence left the room quiet. William looked at David. David's face had gone still, the way it did when he heard something true and unwelcome. Bennett turned to Angela. "Shelter placement may be possible, but late-night availability is limited. I can make calls." Angela nodded. but the humiliation of needing the calls showed on her face. She had spent years caring for elderly people in their homes, making sure they had clean sheets, medicine, soup, dignity. Now she was the one being asked where she could sleep safely. William put the clipboard on the hall chair and stepped to the doorway. "Mrs. Carter." Angela looked at him carefully. "I know you said no to a hotel. I respect that. But there is another option. My company keeps a corporate apartment outside town for visiting staff. It has a separate entrance, cameras in the lobby, and no public reservation. You would not owe me anything. Detective Bennett can have the address. The lease stays under my company, not your name, not his reach. You can leave whenever you choose." Angela did not answer. Annie looked at her mother. "Mom." Angela shook her head slightly. "I don't want to be bought." William nodded. "Then don't be. Let it be a locked door for one night." Bennett watched Angela, not William. "I can verify the location and have patrol do extra pass-bys. If you choose it, I'll document that the offer was made for safety and accepted voluntarily." Angela looked tired enough to fall asleep sitting up, but her pride was awake. Why? William did not pretend not to understand. Why help? Yes, he thought of Caroline. He thought of all the times he had arrived too late with flowers, checks, apologies, things that filled rooms without changing the past. "Because your daughter asked for help," he said. "And because once in my life I heard someone ask too late." Angela studied him. Something in her face softened, but only slightly. "That doesn't make you responsible for us." "No," William said. "It makes me responsible for what I do next." Annie looked down at her hands. Bennett said, "Angela, it's your call." Angela took a long breath, then coughed hard enough that Annie stood halfway from her chair. When it passed, Angela nodded once. "One night. Only because Annie needs to sleep." Annie whispered, "You need to sleep too." Angela gave her daughter a look. Mothers have given daughters in every kitchen and hospital room in America. "Don't start parenting me." Annie almost smiled. The small almost smile moved through the room like a match struck in the dark. Bennett stood. "Good. We'll finish the evidence consent. Then I'll send Reed to check the apartment before you arrive. Mr. Hawthorne, I'll need the address." William turned to David. "Call the building manager. No names except mine. No publicity. No staff gossip." David already had his phone out. On it. Angela watched that exchange. "People do what you say pretty fast. Too fast sometimes," William said. "Must be nice. Sometimes. Sometimes it keeps you from learning how to ask." Angela looked at him for a beat longer than before, then looked away. Bennett began the forms. Annie unlocked her phone and placed it on the table. This time, her hand did not shake as badly. Down the hall, a booking door opened and closed. Marcus's voice rose once, then was cut off by another door. Annie heard it. Her shoulders tightened, but she did not pull the phone back. Bennett noticed. "You're doing fine." Annie swallowed. "I don't feel fine." "You don't have to." William picked up his statement again and signed at the bottom. Through the open door, he watched Annie scroll through messages she should never have had to save. Watched Angela sit upright on the last of her strength. Watched Detective Bennett turn fear into pages, copies, time stamps, and case numbers. It was not dramatic. It was not clean, but it was how truth learned to survive the night. When William handed his statement to Reed, the young officer read the first line and looked up. "You wrote her exact words." "Yes." Reed nodded. "Good." William looked back toward Annie. A few hours earlier, she had been a frightened girl behind his car, begging not to be found. Now her words were in an official record. Her evidence was being preserved. Her mother was beside her, and Marcus Vale was behind a locked door. It was not justice yet, but it was no longer silence. Officer Reed drove ahead to check the apartment, while Detective Bennett kept Angela and Annie at the station until the building manager confirmed the unit was ready. It was almost 11 by then. The station had grown quieter, not peaceful, just tired. Phones rang less often. A janitor pushed a mop down the far hallway. Somewhere behind a locked door, Marcus Vale had stopped talking. That silence bothered Annie more than his voice had. She sat with her mother in the interview room, wrapped in David's blanket. watching the door as if sound might come through it before Marcus did. Angela had taken 2 aspirin from a packet Bennett found in the break room. Her fever had not broken, but her eyes were clearer. She kept one hand on Annie's knee, thumb moving back and forth the way she had done when Annie was small and afraid of thunder. William stood near the vending machine with a paper cup of coffee he had not tasted. David was outside on the phone with the building manager. Bennett was at her desk, filling out forms that turned the worst night of Annie's life into case numbers, timestamps, and signatures. Harold Finch called again. William answered. What now? St. Agnes will not release the settlement file without pressure. But I found the attorney who represented one of the women who complained before Angela. Retired now. He remembers Vale. Can he help? Maybe. He said Vale had a pattern. Friendly help, unwanted attention, then punishment when refused. Nothing dramatic enough for a jury at first, which is why he kept getting away with it. William looked through the glass at Annie leaning against Angela. That sounds like him. There's more, Harold said. Vale filed a small claims case 3 years ago against a woman in Lancaster. Claimed she owed him money for repairs he'd made around her house. She said she never asked for the work. Case dismissed, but he used the filing to keep her coming to court. Control through paperwork. Exactly. William, be careful. He may not have money, but he understands systems well enough to weaponize them. William watched Bennett staple the protective order request. So do we. Harold gave a dry breath. That sentence worries me when you say it. I'm not buying the police department. Good, don't buy the family either. William said nothing. Harold softened. I know what you're thinking. No, you don't. I knew Caroline. William looked down at the coffee. The station's fluorescent lights reflected in the dark surface. Then you know why I'm still here. I do. But Angela Carter is not Caroline. And Annie is not a second chance you can own. Help cleanly. Step back when asked. William closed his eyes for a moment. She already told me no once. And you survived it. A corner of William's mouth moved. Barely. Good. Then you're learning. The call ended as Detective Bennett approached. Your apartment checks out, she said. Reed says the lobby camera works, back entrance locks properly, and the unit is empty. 2 bedrooms? Yes. Good. I'll have a patrol car sit nearby for the first hour. After that, pass. Buys through the night. The protective order request is filed electronically, but the judge may not sign until morning. Marcus is being held, so tonight's immediate risk is lower. Lower isn't gone, William said. No, Bennett said. It never is. Angela appeared in the doorway with Annie beside her. Detective? Bennett turned. Yes. What happens to him in the morning? The ADA reviews the charges. He may be arraigned. Bail depends on the judge, the charges, his record, and how the ADA argues risk. So he could walk out. He could, Bennett said. Not tonight, but eventually, yes. Annie's fingers tightened around the blanket. William expected Angela to demand a promise Bennett could not make. She did not. She only nodded, as if adding another fact to a life already built around hard facts. Then we need to be ready before he does, Angela said. Bennett looked at her with respect. Yes, ma'am. That ma'am was different from Reed's earlier one. It did not delay belief. It offered it. David came in from the side door, brushing snow from his coat. Apartment's ready. Building manager will meet us in the garage, not the lobby. No staff except him. Angela looked at William. Garage? Private entrance, he said. No front desk. She studied his face. You thought of that? David did. David shrugged. Too many cameras in lobbies end up on the internet. Annie looked at him. You think somebody would post us? David's face did not change. People post car accidents before they call ambulances. Angela sighed. He's right. Bennett handed Angela a folder. Copies of the emergency information. My card. Reed's card. Victim services number. And instructions. Keep your phone charged. Don't answer unknown numbers. If Marcus contacts either of you directly or through someone else, screenshot it and call me. Annie took the folder for her mother. What about my phone? You copied everything? Yes, Bennett said. And you keep the original. Don't delete. Don't respond. Annie nodded. Reed returned a few minutes later, stamping snow from his boots on the mat. He looked younger than he had in the parking lot. maybe because the certainty had worn off him. "Apartment's clear," he told Bennett. Then he looked at Annie and Angela. "I'll escort you over," Angela said. "Officer Reed." He stopped. "I was angry earlier. You had reason." "I'm still angry," she said, "but you listened before it was too late. So thank you." Reed swallowed. "I should have listened faster." Angela held his gaze. "Next time, do." "Yes, ma'am." That was the second lesson of the night, and William hoped the young officer carried it longer than the paperwork. They left through the side entrance to avoid the front windows. The cold hit them again. Sharper after the station's stale heat, Annie paused on the sidewalk when she saw the small trail of footprints leading toward the booking entrance where Marcus had been taken. They were already filling with snow. Angela touched her arm. "Don't look at his tracks," Annie whispered. "I keep thinking he'll come out. He won't tonight." "You don't know that." "No," Angela said, "but I know you're not behind that car anymore." William heard it and looked away. Some sentences belonged inside a family. The drive to the apartment took 7 minutes. Reed's cruiser led, William's SUV followed, and another patrol car trailed behind. Mill Creek's downtown slid by in dark storefronts and holiday lights left up past the season. A diner sign glowed red at the corner. A church marquee read, "Be kind whenever possible." William thought of how cheap kindness looked on signs and how costly it became in parking lots. The corporate apartment was above a renovated bank building on Cedar Avenue, one town over from Marcus's usual routes. The garage door opened before they arrived. The building manager, a thin man in a puffer jacket, handed David 2 key cards and did not ask questions. "Unit 4B, David said. "Elevator from the garage only at this hour." Reed went up first, checked the hallway, then waved them on. Angela moved slowly now. The fever had taken what the adrenaline had loaned her. Annie kept one arm around her waist. William followed several steps behind, carrying the replaced grocery bag David had packed from an all-night convenience store on the way. Soup, bread, cold medicine, oranges, milk. Angela noticed when they entered the apartment. It was clean and quiet, with beige furniture, a small kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and windows looking over a street where snow softened the parked cars. There were no family photos, no history, no warmth except the heat coming from the vents. But the door locked. That mattered tonight. William placed the grocery bag on the kitchen counter. David stopped for these. Angela looked inside. The same items Annie had dropped. Her face shifted. "You didn't have to do that." "No," William said, "but dinner still mattered." Annie touched the loaf of bread, as if it were proof the night had not taken everything. Reed stood near the door. "I'll be downstairs for a while. Detective Bennett will call in the morning." Angela nodded. "Thank you, officer." When Reed left, the apartment became quiet. David handed William 1 key card and gave the other to Angela. "This one is yours. Mr. Hawthorne doesn't need to come in unless you invite him." Angela looked at David, then at William. "You trained him well?" David answered before William could. "No, ma'am. Life did." That earned the faintest smile from Angela. William moved toward the door. "I'll leave you both to rest. My number is in the folder. So is David's. Use Bennett first for police matters. Use us for logistics only." Angela walked him to the door, slowly. Annie stayed by the counter, opening the soup with shaking hands that were finally allowed to be useful again. At the threshold, Angela said, "Mr. Hawthorne, William is fine." "Not yet." He nodded. "Fair." She looked tired, proud, suspicious, grateful, and unwilling to be any one thing too fully. "I don't know what to make of you." "Neither do I tonight." That surprised a small laugh out of her. Weak but real. Then she grew serious. "Thank you for stopping when I said no. A lot of men hear no as the start of an argument." William glanced back toward Annie, then met Angela's eyes. "I'm learning to hear it as a full sentence." Angela held the door with one hand. "Good night, Mr. Hawthorne." "Good night, Mrs. Carter." The door closed between them. William waited until he heard the lock turn. Only then did he step back. David stood by the elevator. "Hotel?" William looked at the closed apartment door. Behind it, a mother was sick, a daughter was safe for one night, and a can of soup was probably being opened with more meaning than most men gave to banquets. "Not yet," William said. "We wait in the garage until Reed leaves." David nodded as if he had expected that. They rode the elevator down in silence. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the streets, the tire marks, the footprints, and everything people wanted hidden by morning. But in an evidence room at Mill Creek Police Department, a receipt, a video file, and a young woman's words had already been saved. Marcus Vale could still lie. He just no longer had the night to himself. By midnight, Annie had stopped shaking, but she had not fallen asleep. She sat at the small kitchen table in the apartment, with a blanket around her shoulders and a bowl of soup cooling in front of her. Angela had eaten half a slice of toast, taken medicine, and finally let Annie guide her to the bedroom. She did not want to lie down at first. Mothers could be stubborn in the face of fever, especially when fear had convinced them that sleep was a kind of negligence. But Annie stood in the doorway with the same look Angela had used on her for years and said, "Please, Mom, just close your eyes for 10 minutes. Angela had closed them. 10 minutes became 20. Now the apartment was quiet except for the heater and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Outside the window, Cedar Avenue lay under fresh snow. A patrol car sat across the street for the first hour, then drove away slowly, leaving 2 clean tracks behind. Annie watched until the taillights disappeared. She did not like that. She picked up her phone, then put it down. Detective Bennett had told her not to answer unknown numbers. Do not delete. Do not respond. Screenshot everything. The rules were simple. Following them was harder, because every buzz from the phone felt like a hand reaching through the wall. It buzzed once. Annie froze. The screen lit up. Unknown number. She did not touch it. She only leaned close enough to read. You think locked doors change anything? For a moment, she could not breathe. Then another message appeared. Ask your mother what happens when people embarrass me. Annie stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. The sound carried into the bedroom. Angela coughed once but did not wake. Annie took a screenshot the way Detective Bennett had shown her. Her fingers were steadier than she expected, and that scared her too. A person should not become practiced at being threatened. She called Bennett. The detective answered on the second ring, her voice alert but rough with fatigue. Bennett, it's Annie, he texted. Are you safe? I'm in the apartment. Door locked. My mom's asleep. Good. Do not answer him. Did you screenshot? Yes. Send it to me. I'm calling the station now. Annie swallowed. He's locked up, right? He was when I left. Then how is he texting me? Bennett did not answer immediately, and the silence told Annie enough. Detective, he may have scheduled messages. He may have another phone. He may have someone else sending them. We'll find out. Stay away from the windows. Wake your mother if you need to, but don't panic her unless there's immediate danger. Annie looked toward the bedroom door. She finally fell asleep. Then let her sleep for now. I'm sending a unit back to your building. After the call ended, Annie stood in the kitchen with her phone in her hand and the soup cold on the table. She wanted to be brave. She was tired of being brave. Both things were true. Down in the garage, William had not left. David sat behind the wheel with the SUV turned off. William sat in the back, coat open, tie loosened, phone on his knee. The garage lights buzzed overhead. Every few minutes, a pipe clicked somewhere in the ceiling. Reed's patrol car had left 8 minutes earlier. William had watched it go and felt the old familiar irritation of relying on systems that moved in shifts. David looked at him in the mirror. You should sleep. So should you. I'm paid not to. That doesn't make it noble. No, sir. Just familiar. William almost smiled. His phone rang before he could answer. Bennett. He picked up. Detective. Annie received 2 threat texts from an unknown number. William sat forward. From Marcus? Unknown. He's in holding, property logged, phone secured. I'm checking whether he had a second device or contacted someone before booking. I'm sending Reed back. We're still in the garage. A pause. Of course you are. Do you want us to go up? No. I want you to stay exactly where you are unless there's an emergency. If you rush upstairs, you become part of the disturbance. Let my officer handle the welfare check. But keep David alert. He already is. I figured. William looked at David. David had started the engine before William finished the sentence. Bennett continued. And Mr. Hawthorne? Yes? Don't call your private security team and flood my scene. William had been about to do exactly that. He exhaled. Understood. Thank you for pretending that was your first thought. The line went dead. William looked out through the windshield at the garage entrance. She doesn't like me. David put the SUV in gear but did not move. She doesn't need to. A patrol car arrived 6 minutes later. Reed stepped out with another officer and went straight to the elevator. William stayed in the SUV because Bennett had been right. Every instinct he had told him to move toward the problem. Every useful lesson of the night told him not to make himself the center of it. Still, sitting still cost him. Reed knocked on the apartment door 3 times and identified himself. Annie opened only after he told her to check through the peephole. She had the blanket wrapped tight and her phone in hand. Your mother? Asleep. Fever's down a little. Good. May I come in and look around? Annie nodded and stepped back. Reed and the second officer checked the windows, the hallway, the stairwell, and the service entrance. Nothing looked disturbed. No one was outside the door. No strange car sat in the alley below, but Reed did not like the timing any more than Annie did. He looked at the screenshots on her phone. You did the right thing. Is he still at the station? Yes. Then he has someone helping him. Maybe. She looked at him. You don't have to say maybe just because you can't prove it yet. Reed accepted that. You're right. He may have someone helping him. That honesty did more for Annie than comfort would have. The second officer stepped back in from the hallway. Clear. Reed turned to Annie. We're going to sit outside the building again. Detective Bennett is checking his property and calls. Keep the deadbolt on. If anything else comes in, screenshot and call. Don't respond. Annie nodded. Before he left, Reed paused at the door. Miss Carter. Yes? At the store. When he said you were confused, I almost let that frame the whole thing. Annie did not answer. I'm sorry, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Then don't do it to the next girl. Reed's face changed. I won't. He left, and Annie locked the door behind him. In the bedroom, Angela stirred. Annie? Annie put the phone face down on the counter and went to her. I'm here. Angela opened her eyes. Even half asleep. She read her daughter too well. What happened? Nothing inside. Police came back. Everything's okay. Angela pushed herself up. That's not what I asked. Annie sat on the edge of the bed. The room was dim, lit by the street lamp through the blinds. He texted. Angela closed her eyes, and Annie saw anger move through her mother before fear did. That man. He's still locked up. Then someone's helping him. That's what I said. Angela reached for her hand. Baby. I'm sorry. Stop saying that. I'm your mother. I know. But you didn't make him like this. Angela's grip tightened. No, but I opened the door to kindness before I knew it was a trap. Annie leaned against her. You tell me not to blame myself for him, and I mean it. Then listen to yourself. Angela gave a weak laugh that turned into a cough. You get grown at the worst possible times. I had practice. That made Angela go quiet. Annie regretted it as soon as she said it. Mom, I didn't mean. I know what you meant. Angela pulled her close. And I hate that it's true. In the garage, William saw Reed return and speak briefly to the officer outside. Then Reed came to the SUV. William lowered the window. She's safe, Reed said. Text came in. No breach. We'll sit outside. Thank you. Reed hesitated. She told me not to do it to the next girl. William understood. Good advice. Yes, sir. Reed walked back to his cruiser. David looked at William in the mirror. Now hotel? William glanced up toward the apartment windows. One light had come on, then gone off again. Now we wait until the next patrol change. David nodded. He did not argue. Inside the apartment, Annie lay beside her mother, fully dressed, phone on the nightstand, screen down. She did not sleep for a long time. When she finally drifted, it was not because she felt safe. It was because her body took what her mind would not give. Across town, in a holding cell, Marcus Vale sat on a metal bench beneath a camera and smiled at the floor. He had lost control of the parking lot. He had lost control of the station. But somewhere outside those walls, one of his messages had still found Annie, and that meant the night was not finished with him yet. Morning came gray, with snow still pressed against the window ledges and the streets below scraped into narrow lanes by early plows. Annie woke before Angela. For a few seconds, she did not know where she was. The ceiling was unfamiliar. The blanket smelled like hotel laundry instead of home. The room was too quiet, too clean, too empty of their things. Then she saw her mother asleep beside her, one hand still near Annie's sleeve. And the night returned in pieces. The grocery store, the parking lot, William Hawthorne's coat, Marcus's voice, the police station, the text messages. Her phone lay face down on the nightstand. She stared at it for a full minute before touching it. No new messages. That should have helped. It did not. Silence from Marcus did not feel like absence. It felt like holding his breath. Angela stirred. You awake? Yeah. What time? Annie checked. 6:40. Angela pushed herself up slowly, wincing as fever and exhaustion argued with her. Any messages? No. Angela studied her face. You checked? First thing. I wish you didn't have to. I know. They sat in the dim room without turning on the light. Outside, a truck backed up somewhere below, beeping softly. Life had continued for everyone else. That was always strange. After a bad night, somewhere people were making coffee, scraping windshields, packing lunches, complaining about snow. Annie wondered if any of them knew how thin the wall was between ordinary and not ordinary. A knock came at the apartment door. Both women froze. Then William's voice came from the hallway, calm and low. Mrs. Carter? It's William. David is with me. Detective Bennett is on the phone. Angela exhaled and got out of bed, reaching for her coat though she was still in pajamas. Stay here. Annie followed anyway. Angela looked through the peephole, then opened the door with the chain still on. William stood several feet back, not crowding the door. David stood beside him holding 2 paper bags and a tray of coffee cups. William had changed into a dark sweater and overcoat, but he looked as if he had not slept much either. Angela kept the chain on. Morning. Good morning, he said. Detective Bennett asked me to tell you Marcus is still in custody. His morning review is set for 10. She'll call you herself in a few minutes. Annie stepped closer. Did they find out how he texted me? William's face did not soften to hide the answer. Not fully. They found his primary phone in property. They're checking whether he used another device before booking or had someone send the messages. Harold is also looking. Angela's eyes narrowed. Harold? My attorney. Angela looked tired enough to dislike everyone with a law degree on principle. Of course. William accepted the edge. He can be useful without speaking to you unless you ask. David lifted the paper bag slightly. Breakfast. Nothing fancy. Oatmeal, toast, fruit. Coffee for the adults. Hot chocolate if Miss Carter wants it. Annie's stomach turned at the word breakfast, then remembered she had barely eaten. Angela looked at the bags, then at William. Pride stood up before gratitude could. You don't need to feed us. No, William said, but the building cafe opens at 6, and David has a habit of buying too much. David looked at Angela. That part is true. Annie glanced at her mother. Mom. Angela closed her eyes for a second. Fine. But we're paying you back. William nodded. You can argue with David about the oatmeal. David's face stayed serious. I don't lose oatmeal arguments, ma'am. Angela almost smiled and closed the door to remove the chain. When she opened it again, William did not step inside until she moved aside. That mattered to her. Annie saw it. Maybe William did too. They sat at the small kitchen table while Detective Bennett called on speaker. Her voice came through tired but steady. Marcus remains in custody. The ADA is adding witness intimidation based on last night's hallway threat and the texts are being reviewed. The protective order request is in front of the judge. I expect an answer this morning. Angela wrapped both hands around the coffee cup. Expect isn't a promise. No, ma'am. It's not. What happens if the judge sets bail? We argue conditions. No contact. No proximity to your home, your workplace, Annie's school, and any temporary residence. We also notify victim services and set a safety plan. Annie asked, Can he still send people? Bennett paused. He can try. If anyone contacts you for him, you document it and call me. Third-party contact can violate an order too. Angela's jaw tightened. He knows people. I know, Bennett said. And now we know he knows people. That changes how we look. After the call ended, the apartment felt smaller. William pushed his untouched coffee away. Angela noticed. You don't drink station coffee and you don't drink cafe coffee. What do billionaires drink? Usually whatever someone hands me before I'm awake enough to refuse. Annie looked at him. Do you always answer like that? Like what? Like you're trying to be normal. David took a sip of coffee to hide his reaction. William leaned back. I'm told I need practice. Angela looked at Annie. Don't tease the man before he's finished buying our oatmeal. I said we're paying him back. I know what you said. For a few seconds, the room held something almost ordinary. Mother and daughter, coffee cooling, snow at the window, a stranger being measured at the table. Then Annie's phone buzzed. Everyone stopped. Annie turned it over. This time, it was not an unknown number. It was Detective Bennett, sending a screenshot from the court portal. Emergency order signed, temporary, active immediately. Angela read it twice before speaking. So he can't come near us. He legally can't, William said. Angela looked at him. That's different from can't. Yes, he said, it is. She seemed to appreciate that he did not decorate the truth. David's phone rang. He stepped into the hall to answer, then returned with his mouth set in a straight line. Mr. Hawthorne. William stood. What? Press got your name. Angela stiffened. What press? Local business blog first. Now a Philadelphia outlet is asking why William Hawthorne was at Mill Creek PD last night with a harassment suspect and 2 women. Annie's face went blank. Oh no. Angela stood too fast and gripped the table. No. No. We are not being turned into a story. William looked at David. Who leaked it? Unknown. Angela's eyes went hard. Marcus. William did not disagree. His phone began ringing. Then David's again. Then a notification sounded from Annie's phone. She looked despite herself. A local headline had already formed, ugly in the way half-truths are ugly. Billionaire involved in late night dispute over local girl. Annie set the phone down as if it had burned her. Angela's voice shook. That man is in a cell, and he's still reaching. William looked at the headline, then at Annie. The story was already trying to change shape. Marcus had not needed freedom. He had only needed speed. William took out his phone. Angela said, "Don't." He stopped. "I haven't done anything, but you're about to. I can see it." He put the phone on the table. "Then tell me what not to do. Don't make us your press statement." "I won't." "Don't say Annie's name." "I won't." "Don't call me a victim like that's the only thing I am." William was quiet for a second. "All right." Angela seemed surprised again by how quickly he accepted correction. "You mean that?" "Yes." Annie looked between them. "What can we do?" William turned to her, not her mother, because she had asked. "We can say nothing until Detective Bennett tells us what helps the case. We can ask my attorney to demand corrections if anything false is published. And I can make a statement about myself only." Angela folded her arms. "Meaning?" "Meaning I say I witnessed a young woman ask for help. I called police, and I'm cooperating. No names, no details, no story for sale." Angela thought about it. "And if they ask if you took us to this apartment?" "I won't answer," David added. "We can move you if location risk changes." Angela rubbed her forehead. "I hate this," Annie said softly. "I hate that he makes everything about him." That sentence settled over the table. William looked at the headline again and felt the old machinery of money and media waiting for his command. For once, he did not want to command it. He wanted to place one clean sentence where Marcus had planted smoke. He called Harold on speaker. "Draft a statement," William said. "Short. No names. No description. Nothing about race, unless the Carters choose to speak to that later. Say I witnessed a person in distress, contacted law enforcement, and will cooperate fully. Say any attempt to identify or harass private citizens connected to this matter will be met with legal action." Harold replied, "Already drafting." Angela stared at the phone. "You always move that fast?" Harold answered before William could. "Only when he's trying to avoid being wrong slowly." Annie actually smiled then, small and tired. William ended the call and looked at Angela. You approve it before it goes out. She shook her head. You're asking my permission? It concerns you. It concerns your name. It concerns your daughter's safety. Angela held his gaze for a long moment. Then yes. I approve it first. The next hour moved in calls, screenshots, and careful wording. Bennett agreed with the statement. Harold sent letters to 2 outlets. David arranged to move the SUV from the garage so photographers could not trace the building. Reed called to say Marcus had been served with the temporary order in holding and had refused to sign acknowledgement, which did not matter. Angela took her medicine. Annie ate half a piece of toast. William stood by the window, not looking out through the blinds, just standing near enough to feel useful, and far enough not to own the room. Near 9:30, Bennett called again. Court review is in 30 minutes, she said. You don't need to appear. But Annie? Angela, I need you ready to give a fuller recorded statement today. Mr. Hawthorne, your statement helped establish the first contact. The receipt, video, and texts are logged. Annie asked, what if he says I'm lying? Bennett said, then we keep showing the things that don't lie. After the call, Angela sank into the chair. Things that don't lie. Must be nice. William looked at the grocery bag on the counter, the one David had bought in the early morning. Some things tell the truth quietly. Angela followed his gaze. The soup, the bread, the cold medicine, the oranges. Annie had not run from a hospital. She had not invented a father. She had not made herself a story. She had gone out into the snow to take care of her mother, and a man who could not accept no had followed her. Angela reached for Annie's hand. William's phone buzzed with the approved statement. He handed it to Angela before reading it himself. She looked at him, then took the phone. Outside, the city began its morning as if nothing had happened. Inside, Annie watched her mother read a Billionaire's statement one line at a time, correcting a word here, cutting a phrase there, making sure their lives did not become decoration for his reputation. William accepted every edit. By the time the statement went out, it did not sound like a rich man saving anyone. It sounded like a witness who had finally learned to stay in his proper place and tell the truth from there. The statement did what William hoped it would do, and not one thing more. It did not make the calls stop. It did not keep strangers from guessing. It did not erase the headline that had already found its way onto phones across Mill Creek before most people had finished their first cup of coffee. But it drew a line, and lines mattered. Harold's legal notice followed 10 minutes later, sharper than the statement and less polite. By noon, 2 outlets had changed their wording. By 1, a third had removed Annie's age and neighborhood. By 2, Detective Bennett called to say the judge had continued Marcus's hold with strict no-contact conditions pending arraignment. Angela listened on speaker, sitting at the kitchen table with a blanket around her shoulders and a mug of tea she kept forgetting to drink. So he's not walking out today? She asked. Not today, Bennett said. And if that changes, you'll know before he does if I can manage it. Angela closed her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Rest. And keep the phones charged. When the call ended, Annie leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. I feel like I should be happy. Angela touched her wrist. You don't have to feel the right thing on schedule. William stood near the counter, where he had been making himself useful by doing almost nothing. He had learned quickly that useful silence was harder than giving orders. David had gone downstairs to check the garage again. Harold had stopped calling every 10 minutes after Angela told him, Mr. Finch, I understand you bill by the hour, but I do not have the strength to hear your voice that often. Harold had laughed, then obeyed. Annie looked at William. What happens to him after today? William did not answer as if certainty belonged to him. Detective Bennett will build the case. The prosecutor decides charges. Your evidence matters. Your mother's evidence matters. The store video matters. And if they still say it's not enough? Angela's face tightened, but William spoke first, gently. Then we keep going. Annie looked down. People always say that, like it's easy. It isn't. That made her look back up. William continued. When people say keep going, they usually forget somebody has to do it tired. Angela watched him over the rim of her cup. You sound like a man who learned that late. I learned many things late. Must be expensive. Very. Annie almost smiled, then lost it. Can I go home? Angela answered before William could. Not today. I know. I just want my sketchbook. Angela softened. The blue one? And my charcoal pencils. William looked at Angela. Detective Bennett said an officer could escort you home to collect essentials. Angela shook her head. I'm not taking her back there yet. I can send David with an officer, William said. Then he corrected himself before Angela had to. Only if you want that. Angela noticed the correction. You're improving. Slowly, Annie said. My sketchbook is on my desk, top drawer. The pencils are in a coffee tin. Angela looked at her daughter. You sure? Annie nodded. I don't want him taking that too. That decided it. David returned 15 minutes later with Officer Reed. Reed had changed into a fresh jacket but still looked as if the night had stayed with him. He stood at the door and did not enter until Angela said, Come in. I can escort someone to the Maple Street house, he said. Detective Bennett cleared it. No sign of disturbance. Angela looked at David. You mind? No, ma'am. Reed glanced at William. You're not coming? William looked at Angela first. She said, No offense, Mr. Hawthorne. But if half the town is trying to figure out where you are, you walking through my front door won't help. None taken. David took a written list from Annie. She had printed carefully, as if making the list neat could keep the fear contained. Sketchbook, charcoal pencils, mom's blue sweater, medicine from bathroom cabinet, phone charger, work shoes, insurance folder, framed photo of Robert Carter. When she handed it to David, her finger paused on the last item. It's on Mom's dresser, silver frame. Angela turned away for a second. David folded the list once. I'll bring it. Reed and David left, and the apartment settled again. William made fresh tea because Angela had forgotten hers. Annie sat by the window without opening the blinds. The day outside was bright with reflected snow, too bright for what they felt. Angela finally said, You have somewhere to be, don't you? William set the mug in front of her. Usually. That means yes. It means nothing that can't wait. That's not how men like you stay rich. No, it may be how they stay human. Angela looked at him then, really looked, the way she had in the doorway the night before, but with less fear between them. You say things like that on purpose? Sometimes they escape. She shook her head, but there was warmth under it. You're strange. I've been called worse. I'm sure you have. Probably in nicer rooms. He sat across from her only after she gestured to the chair. Annie noticed that too. For a while they talked about practical things. Angela's employer, Annie's school, the protective order, which neighbors could be trusted, and which ones loved information more than people. Angela named one woman across the street who would help without asking questions and one man who would pretend to help, then tell the barber everything by noon. That's small towns, William said. You know small towns? I grew up in one poorer than this. Angela raised an eyebrow. You? West Virginia. My father repaired boilers. My mother cleaned offices after hours. I learned early that money doesn't make noise when you don't have any. Annie turned from the window. You weren't always rich? No. Did people treat you different after? Yes. Did you like it? William thought before answering. At first, Angela understood the answer better than Annie did, and then I realized some people weren't respecting me. They were respecting the distance between us. The room went quiet. Angela said, That's a lonely thing to buy. It is. Annie looked at him with new curiosity, but before she could ask more, her phone buzzed. This time it was David. She answered on speaker. Did you find it? Yes, ma'am, David said. Sketchbook, pencils, sweater, medicine, charger, work shoes, insurance folder. Officer Reed is holding the photo frame now. Anything else from the desk? Annie looked at Angela. Angela said, The envelope in the bottom drawer. Annie frowned. What envelope? Angela closed her eyes briefly. Old reports. Notes I kept. Times Marcus showed up. I didn't throw them away. William leaned forward but did not speak. David said, I see it. Brown envelope? Yes. Got it. Annie stared at her mother. You kept notes? Angela's voice was quiet. I kept what I could. I thought maybe one day someone would ask in a way that mattered. Annie crossed the room and hugged her from the side. Angela held her with one arm, the other hand over her eyes. William looked toward the closed door, giving them the dignity of not being watched too closely. When David returned with Reed, the apartment changed again. Not safer exactly, but more rooted. Annie took the sketchbook and held it to her chest. Angela took the silver-framed photo of Robert Carter and placed it on the kitchen counter. In the picture, Robert was young, smiling, one arm around Angela, a baby Annie asleep against his shoulder. William looked at it, then looked away. Angela saw him. That's Annie's father. He has kind eyes. He did. There was no jealousy in the room, no awkwardness, just the truth of a man who had existed and mattered before all this. William respected that by saying nothing more. Reed handed Bennett the brown envelope when she arrived an hour later. The detective opened it at the table with gloves. Inside were dated notes in Angela's handwriting, printed emails, screenshots, a photo of Marcus's car taken from behind a curtain, and a copy of a complaint Angela had tried to file months earlier. Bennett looked up. Angela. I know, Angela said. I should have brought it sooner. No, Bennett said. You kept it alive. That's enough for today. Annie opened her sketchbook while the adults sorted papers. William saw the pages only because she sat where the light fell across them. Horses, houses, a woman at a window, a dark car across a street, a girl standing in a grocery aisle with a man reflected in the glass. Annie saw him looking and almost closed it. William turned his eyes away. Sorry. It's okay, she said after a moment. I just don't like people seeing before I'm done. My mistake. She studied him. Do you want to see one? Only then did he look back. If you want to show me. She turned to the last page. It was unfinished. A horse stood in snow beside a fence. The gate was open, but the horse had not stepped through yet. William did not praise it too quickly. Adults often ruined young artists by naming feelings before the artist had chosen them. After a while, he said, The open gate matters. Annie looked at the page. It doesn't know if it's safe. No, William said, but it knows the gate is open. Angela heard that and looked over. Something passed across her face, tired and tender. Even Detective Bennett paused. By evening, the apartment had become a temporary headquarters of survival. Bennett left with the envelope. Reed promised another patrol. David stocked the fridge with enough groceries for 2 days. After Angela argued and lost only because he let her choose what stayed. Harold called once, spoke to Angela with more humility than lawyers usually managed, and promised no action would be taken in her name without permission. When night came, Marcus was still in custody. The no-contact order was active. The press had moved on to other noise. It was not over, but it was contained for the first time. William stood at the door to leave. Angela walked him out. Annie was at the table, drawing again. Mr. Hawthorne, Angela said. He smiled faintly. Still not William? Not yet. Fair. She folded her arms, but there was less armor in it. You did a decent thing today. Only decent? Don't get greedy. He laughed softly. It surprised them both. Angela looked down the hallway, then back at him. Annie trusted you enough to show you that drawing. That means something. I know. Don't make her regret it. The words were not accusation. They were a mother's law. William nodded. I won't. She held his gaze another second. Good night, Mr. Hawthorne. Good night, Mrs. Carter. The door closed, and this time William did not wait for the lock because he heard it immediately. Inside, Annie looked up from her sketchbook. Mom? Yes? Do you think the horse should go through the gate? Angela sat beside her, tired but present. Not because anyone tells it to. Annie nodded, picked up her pencil, and drew one hoof past the line. 3 months later, the snow was gone from Mill Creek, but Annie still remembered the sound it made under Marcus Vale's shoes. She remembered it less often now. That was new. For a while, every scrape of a boot on pavement had made her turn. Every unknown number had made her stomach close. Every man standing too long near a doorway became a question her body answered before her mind could. Detective Bennett had warned her about that. Safety gets proven in small payments, she had said. Your nerves don't cash the whole check at once. Annie had not understood then. She did now. Marcus was awaiting trial. The charges had grown after Bennett found more women willing to talk. Women from St. Agnes, from Lancaster, from places Marcus had left behind with the carefulness of a man who knew how to walk away before the room caught fire. Angela's brown envelope had become important. The store video had become important. Annie's phone had become important. Even William's first statement, plain and exact, had mattered because it captured the moment before Marcus could rewrite it. But none of that was what brought people to the Mill Creek Community Center on a mild Saturday evening in April. They came for Annie's art show. It was not a grand event. The room had folding chairs stacked against one wall, a long table with lemonade, coffee, grocery store cookies, and a sheet cake someone from Angela's church had brought without asking permission. The floor smelled faintly of wax. The lights were too bright. Children ran in and out of the hallway until an older volunteer told them, kindly but firmly, to take it outside. Annie stood near the back wall in a blue dress Angela had ironed twice. Her hair was pinned up, but one curl kept slipping loose near her cheek. She held the edge of her sketchbook with both hands, not because she needed it, but because it had been with her through too much to be left in the car. Angela adjusted the small card beneath one of the framed drawings. This one's crooked. Mom, you fixed it 3 times. And it's been crooked 3 times. It's fine. Angela stepped back, squinted, then moved it a 1/4 inch anyway. Annie shook her head, but she smiled while doing it. Across the room, William Hawthorne stood beside David Ross, dressed in a dark suit without a tie because Angela had once told him he looked like he was about to buy the building every time he wore one. He had not bought the community center. He had offered to fund repairs through an anonymous grant, and Angela had made him wait until the board voted on it properly. He had waited. It had not killed him. David held a paper plate with a piece of cake on it. You nervous? William looked at Annie, who was pretending not to look at the door every few minutes. A little. It's her show. I know. Then why are you nervous? William watched Angela laugh at something Officer Reed had said. Reed had come off duty, in a plaid shirt and jeans, looking uncomfortable without his uniform. Detective Bennett stood near the coffee, speaking with 2 women from St. Agnes who had driven in together and stayed close to each other the whole evening. William said, because good things can feel fragile when you know what they cost. David considered that. Cake helps. William looked at the plate. Does it? In most American towns, yes, sir. William took the second fork David offered. Near the entrance, Angela greeted people as they came in. She moved with more strength now. The fever was long gone. The fear had not vanished, but it no longer sat on her shoulders every hour of the day. She had taken extra shifts again, then fewer when the Victim Support Fund helped cover time off for court. She had argued about that money too. William had learned to let her argue, then let her decide. He had also learned that Angela Carter did not like lilies, preferred coffee with chicory when she could get it, distrusted men who interrupted waitresses, and could make a nurse's calm sound more dangerous than a shout. They spoke every few days now. At first, it had been about lawyers, housing, safety plans, Annie's school forms. Then one night the conversation had lasted 40 minutes, after every practical matter had ended. Neither of them named what was happening. That would come later, if it came at all. Annie walked to the center of the room when the community arts director tapped a spoon against a glass and asked for attention. The room quieted in uneven waves. I'm not giving a speech, Annie said. Angela murmured, that's what people say right before giving one. A few people laughed. Annie did too, and it loosened the room. She looked at the drawings on the wall. There were early sketches, soup cans, street lights, hands, a grocery bag in snow. There was one of a black SUV under a parking lot lamp, but no one stood in front of it like a hero. The car was just a shape, a place where hiding had ended. Another drawing showed Angela asleep in a chair, one hand open, as if even in sleep she was ready to hold on. Then there were horses, horses behind fences, horses at gates, horses facing open fields and not yet moving. The final drawing was larger than the rest, done in charcoal and soft blue-gray wash. A dark horse ran through a field after the snow melt, its mane lifted by wind. Behind it, a fence stood with the gate open. No person chased it. No rope marked its neck. In the distance was a small house with a yellow window. Annie looked at that drawing longest. I used to draw fences because I didn't know how to draw fear, she said. Then I drew open gates because I didn't know how to draw safe. I still don't always know. She glanced at Angela. But I know what it looks like when somebody believes you before all the proof comes in. I know what it looks like when your mother keeps notes because she hopes the truth will need them someday. I know what it looks like when people stop saying family matter and start saying wrong. The room was very still. Annie swallowed. That's all. It was not all, but it was enough. People clapped. Not loudly at first, then more fully. Angela wiped her eyes with the corner of her thumb and pretended she had not. Detective Bennett clapped with her jaw set. Reed looked at the floor, then back up. David clapped once while still holding cake, then realized it was impractical and set the plate down. William did not clap right away. He was looking at the final drawing. The horse was already past the gate, but the open gate remained in the picture. Annie had not erased what had held it. She had only made sure it no longer held. After the room began to move again, Annie came to him. "You look serious," she said. "I was thinking, that's dangerous for rich people, right?" "Very. We usually hire someone for it." She smiled. "Do you like it? The horse?" "The whole thing." William took his time. "I think you drew freedom without pretending the fence was never there." Annie looked at him, and for a moment she was the girl behind the SUV again, measuring whether an adult had heard her correctly. Then she nodded. "That's what I wanted." Angela joined them, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to William. "Community center coffee. Don't make a face." "I wouldn't dare. You made one last time. I was new. You were spoiled. I remain spoiled, but I'm quieter about it." Annie laughed and moved away to speak with Bennett. Angela watched her go. "She slept through the night twice this week." William understood the size of the news. "That's good." "It is." They stood side by side, looking at the drawings. After a while, William said, "There's a diner near the river. Nothing impressive. Bad parking. Good pie." According to David. Angela turned her head. "Are you asking me to dinner?" "Yes." "Tonight?" "Only if you want." She studied him. "No reporters?" "No." "No private room where the waiter looks scared?" "No." "No speech about destiny?" William looked genuinely troubled. "I had several prepared." Angela laughed then, full enough that Annie looked over from across the room. It was a sound without fear behind it, and William felt honored simply to have been near when it returned. Angela said, "Pie sounds all right. Is that a yes?" "That's a cautious yes. I'll take it. You'll earn it." I assumed. Across the room, Annie turned back to Detective Bennett and showed her the sketchbook. David found another piece of cake. Reed helped an older woman carry folding chairs away from the wall. Outside, evening settled over Mill Creek, soft and ordinary. Annie had once hidden behind a stranger's car and begged not to be found. Now her name was printed beneath every drawing in careful black letters. Annie Carter. Not Marcus's story. Not a case number. Not a frightened girl in someone else's headline. Her own name, under her own work, in a room full of people who had finally learned to look. The lesson of Annie's story is that truth often begins with one person brave enough to listen. Evil does not always arrive shouting. Sometimes it wears a calm face, uses polite words, and calls control concern. Annie was not saved because William was rich. She was saved because, in the moment that mattered, he chose to believe a frightened young woman before allowing a smoother voice to rewrite her story. The story reminds us that justice is not only found in courtrooms. Sometimes it begins in a parking lot, with a simple decision. Do not look away when someone is asking for help. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.